Aww.
Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to the stream. This is my first stream with a guest, and it's only my third stream, so we're jumping quick on this. So, my guest is the Edge Knight, aka Austin Flowers. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good evening. Tonight. I'm Aegon's bastard, one of millions, as we'll talk about. But no, this is only my second time being featured, and I'm a huge fan so far. Yeah, been looking forward to this one for quite a while. A lot of stuff to say.
Yeah, you and I were both got our starts with David Lightbringer, and you did the Is a Song of Ice and Fire Nihilistic, and I have that. Yeah. I have that linked in the video info along with your Twitters. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
No, that's it, man.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can just jump straight into this. So today we're going to be talking about dragonseeds. Really, we're going to be talking about the post-dance dragonseeds. Now, dragonseeds got their fame during the dance, but even after the dance ended and we go into the reign of Aegon III, after the last dragon has died, dragonseeds will continue to both bless and curse the Targaryen dynasty. A good portion of that comes from Aegon III's very lustful nephew, who will later become Aegon IV. He produces hundreds, if not dozens, if not hundreds of bastards. According to himself, he believes that he may have sired over 900 bastards in his time, which is there's a bad Dragon Ball Z joke in there, like, Viserys, what does the scouter say about his child level? Over 900.
Wow.
But so
yeah, he was very prolific.
Very prolific, very potent. And the reason that we're doing this stream, what started this off is, like, now me and you have been talking for a while on Twitter, and Twitter is a cesspool, but occasionally someone will throw a chlorine block in there, and some good ideas will sprout. And you had an idea about possible Targaryen connections to Craster and why his sons might be so special, and you connected that to Maester Aemon. And that was a theory. Like, I love that theory so much it's become my own personal headcanon. And so
right on.
So I think since that was the inspiration for having you on. Also, Austin, you're also going to be a guest for a later stream. Like, during this stream, we are going to touch upon the Blackfyre family tree, and then you are going to guest the second time on a later date where we're going to talk the actual rebellions, because you and I both have ideas about that.
Yeah, actually, and I think a lot of this ties retroactively into the rebellions themselves, especially a lot of the timing. You know, especially around the second and fourth rebellions, kind of linked to bastards and linked to heirs, and a lot of it was wrapped up in the legacy that, you know, Aegor wanted to continue, or the one that he didn't want to continue in the case of Daemon II. So yeah,
we're gonna touch on all of that. And I knew Carl Karsnark's here, making the no more siege joke. Yes. If you followed my Twitter, or if you were around for Joe Magician's stream earlier today, you may have known that I had a vasectomy yesterday. So that's why I got Austin with me helping with the heavy lifting, because I can't lift anything heavy right now. These are usually, my streams are always laid back, but today they're even more laid back because I am in the recliner with an ice pack on my groin. But yes, no dragon seeds for me. No children in the gray waste. Second big announcement that I have though too is my girlfriend, Lauren Morgan, Blue-Eyed Vamp, no longer just girlfriend, now fiance. I proposed to her last Sunday. Thank you.
Way to go, man.
So a lot happening in the Grey Waste right now. But
good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. You have children, correct?
I do. Two. Yeah.
Plans for a third?
Oh, yeah. No. Two is too many.
Two's enough.
No. Yeah, 2 is more than enough. But yeah, no, nothing in the works currently. But you never know. That's the way kids. That's the way kids work. Is you never ever know.
Yeah. Well, if you end up deciding that 2 is it, I can now say from personal experience, the snip, not the worst. The worst is the numbing agent, but the actual procedure, my doctor just kind of talked. I just kind of sat back, and me and my doctor just shot the shit while he did it.
Oh dang, that's cool.
Worst part comes after when the lidocaine wears off.
I bet. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
But
it's something to consider.
Yeah,
for sure.
Enough about my nuts, though. We're here to talk about dragon seeds, and I'd like to pass it on to you. So if you like to just lay out your Craster theory, and we can start with that.
All right. So the Craster theory, it's a bit later in the game. Obviously, Craster is a character that's still alive. So it's not going to be like talking about any of the other Aegon or Targaryen bastards, except for Jon. But let's see. Okay, so this one's a bit of a long one, and we're going to go back and forth between tinfoil and book material. So I'll try to be clear which one's which. Craster. So when we meet Craster in Jon 3, Clash of Kings, I believe it is, he's described as once a powerful-looking man. Craster is nearing the natural end of his life, which puts him age-wise, this is the Middle Ages, so between 30 and 50, naturally. It's not a long life up there, especially in the north.
No.
So we're told that from Ygritte tells Jon that Craster's father was a man on the Night's Watch. He was a crow, and that his mother was a wildling from White Tree. Now, what led me to this theory was the oddity about the Mon being from White Tree. It kind of feels like something that we would hone in on for, like a LML stream would be all the symbolism that somebody sent from a white tree. So there's kind of that, already that air of having to do with the Weirwood net and having to do with somebody that had, intimate connections with the Weirwood net. So when we get to White Tree, we see that so the Weirwood tree in White Tree is massive. The entire village of White Tree fits underneath the branches of this giant Weirwood tree. And Jon describes the tree as with a huge face and a mouth big enough to swallow a sheep. And there's another kind of tie-in right there is, the Craster sacrifices sheep when he doesn't have children to sacrifice. So there's kind of that. It's the one of the only other times they talk about sheep north of the wall, which is interesting. So Ygritte tells Jon that Craster is, more your kind than ours. And she's talking to Jon when she says this. So, George, she could be saying Craster is more your kind than anybody else's. Or she's just saying, Craster is more a man of the Night's Watch. Could be either way. Craster could be more dragon than not, or just like Jon, or he could be more a southerner than a wildling. But it's an interesting way to put that. So she tells us that his father was a crow who stole a woman out of White Tree, and that after he had her, he flew back to the wall. Now, crows fly, but dragons fly too. That one's But it does make us ask, why would somebody, why does somebody leave immediately after sleeping with somebody? Why would anybody do that? Well, shame is why people would do that, basically. So this Night's Watchman feels ashamed after sleeping with a wildling, which is not something. I mean, Jon goes through shame, but he doesn't like up and peace out after his time with the Grit or his night with the Grit. He pieces out when it gets weird, and Mance and that little faction is going to attack Castle Black. Then he takes off outside of Queen's Crown or whatever that is. But anyway, so the whole issue about the shame thing really got to me. Why would a Night's Watchman sleep with a wildling and then leave immediately? Like the next day, it says he flew back to the wall like a crow. Craster's blood is black, Grit says. Black dragon? Black of the Night's Watch? What are you trying to get at here? And he bears a heavy curse. I'm not sure what Craster's curse would be other than sending his children to the others and in that way being a kinslayer. But I'm not sure if there's another tie-in to something previous about that being cursed as, being Aemon's bastard or a Targaryen bastard. Let's see. So what we do know about the events surrounding the Wall in the last 100 years is that Bloodraven gets sent to the Wall in 233. He's 58 at this point. He's older, he's getting up there. We can go over why he got sent to the Wall and not killed in the next stream. But then he disappears at the age of 77. Like, was that almost 19 years after getting to the Wall?
And at some point within that 19 years, he's promoted to Lord Commander.
That one actually happened pretty quick. That happened terrifically fast.
And it makes sense when a lot of the Raven's teeth are coming with him. Like he's essentially bringing his own votes when he gets there.
Oh yeah, no, I can imagine that they had the majority for sure, and I'm sure he earned the rest of the majority when he got up there. Although he's never mentioned as being either a good or a bad Lord Commander. In fact, he's never mentioned as Lord Commander in this series, to my knowledge. I don't think anybody, not even Aemon, says anything about. Does he? Does he say anything about Lord Commander Rivers?
I don't recall anything being said about a Lord Commander Rivers. It's just a bit of extra info that we get in like the World of Ice and Fire and things like that.
Right. We knew that separately. Okay, so my idea, especially with how it's stated in the World Book, was that Aemon was sent north to the Wall, and with him went prisoners, which included Brynden Rivers. So if George wrote it in such a way where, Bloodraven is last on the list, but he's possibly the most important in that whole thing. And I think that Aegon V, had Aemon watching Brynden like a hawk. Aegor had escaped from the boat up to Eastwatch.
Yes, this is
previously
after the third Blackfyre rebellion. Aerys the First, Bloodraven and Aerion Brightflame both demanded that Aegor Rivers be killed then and there, but Aerys said no. He granted him the right to take the Black, but the ship on its way to Eastwatch is intercepted by conspirators that are still at court, and Aegor Rivers flees back to Essos, and he crowns Daemon III, but the fourth Blackfyre rebellion doesn't happen for another 17 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what's his name? Isn't the one that Bloodraven kills to get sent to the Wall? I am drawing a blank at the moment.
That's Aenys Blackfyre at the Great Council 233.
Right. So like you said, 17 years apart. It's not fresh in Aegon's mind, Aegon V's mind, that something could happen on Bloodraven's way north that would endanger him getting to the Wall. But I think he wanted his brother and sent Aemon specifically to keep an eye on Brynden while he was at the Wall. He knew that Aemon would be consigned as a maester, But Aemon was also a young man. I mean, Aemon was what? When he got sent to the wall,
he will only be about a year older than Egg at that point.
He's 35. Yeah, he's 35 when he gets sent to the wall. So he's in the prime of his life. If you're 100, I'll get into this into a minute. If you're 100, 35 must seem pretty long ago. You seemed like a pretty young man. Maybe even, just a boy in your 100-year-old mind. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that Aemon shadowed Brynden on the Rangings. And when Brynden disappeared in 277, I think Aemon was there. And I think that, and this is just my headcanon idea, is that Brynden sent a woman with his psychic ability. He sent a woman from Whitetree to spend a night with Aemon and to effectively distract him for the night. When Aemon talks about, the touch of a newborn son, he's not talking about Rhaegar. He's talking about his own son. He would have said the touch of a newborn baby, but it's not like, I don't know why Aemon would want to be touching newborn babies. He said newborn son, not grand nephew, not, newborn son. So, well, what else do we know about Craster for a second? Let's get back to Craster for a hot minute. I'm sorry, this idea is really expansive. Craster's mother brought him to see the crow, right? Where did I put it? Oh yeah. So she took Craster back to Castle Black. Now we have another story, Mance Rayder's story, north of the Wall. He gets brought as an orphan to the Wall and raised and trained. And I see why there's some animosity there between Craster and Mance, because Mance was taken in by the Night's Watch and Craster wasn't. Him and his mother were sent away. And this gets back to the whole shame thing. Why would a man of the Night's Watch feel shame about sleeping with a wildling? The only reason he would feel bad about it, and yes, people have a conscience, but let's remember the Night's Watch is somewhere where political prisoners and serious actual prisoners get sent. We're not expecting somebody to just grow a conscience overnight. This person would have to be an important person, and they would have to have felt like they did something wrong. And there was only a handful of people who were at the Wall electively, like of their own volition. And Aemon is one of those. I mean, I've heard people, I know Old New Dude loves the idea that Craster is Bloodraven's son. But I think Craster might have, Bloodraven might have something against fathering bastards of his own. First off, I don't think he could. Second off, if he could, I don't see him doing that just to get away from the Watch. I don't see that. I don't see that being a thing.
I agree on that. Sorry, it's the same thing too when we get to the theory, but not to knock anyone's theories, but when people talk about Melisandre's parentage as possibly being that of Bloodraven Sheer Seastar, I don't like that theory. One, because I have no evidence to back it up, but I just have this gut feeling that Bloodraven was sterile. I have a feeling that he was just shooting blanks, and I think and partly I believe that's in contrast to his half-brother Daemon Blackfyre, who had 9 children, and also in contrast to their father Aegon the Unworthy, who had hundreds of children. But also just the idea that if Bloodraven were to have a child, he's a spy master. The idea that his daughter would all of a sudden end up somehow sold into slavery, I don't see Bloodraven being the type of person to allow something like that to happen. Same with Shiera Seastar. Like if he's keeping tabs on as many things as he is, then surely he'd be keeping tabs on his own flesh and blood. Right.
No, absolutely. And it seems like the last thing Bloodraven wants is more bastards in the realm. I have the weirdest feeling the more I look up, what happened to the great bastards and the lesser bastards and all that.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling that Bloodraven saw the extinction of dragons as the greatest weakening that House Targaryen had ever undergone, and the resulting civil wars, the familial civil wars that were the Blackfyre rebellions, every subsequent one would make the Targaryen dynasty look weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And I have this feeling that Bloodraven just didn't want the family to seem weak in the eyes of the realm. He didn't want the family to be fighting themselves. I think possibly he loved Daemon as a brother.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my gut feeling. I think he really, really, really respected Daemon and loved him, but also couldn't abide someone making the family look weak. And, this is the kings.
Oh, yes, I agree. When Bloodraven talks about, every time we say Daemon, he's going to think we're talking about him.
Sorry.
My little Daemon Blackfyre. Yes, every time. But when Bloodraven talks about the brother that he loved, some speculate like, well, who was he talking about? Was it Daeron the Good? And it's possible, but I think that's too easy. And George has stated so many times that the only thing worth writing about is the heart in conflict with itself. So I believe the brother he's talking about is Daemon, because let's also keep in mind too, like Bloodraven gets his start as Master of Whisperers under Daeron the Good. And it seems plausible that Daemon Blackfyre would want the Master of Whispers on his side. So I get the idea that Daemon probably confided in Bloodraven, told him about his plans, and Bloodraven probably, I see him having like a crisis of conflict of what to do. And I'm sure it probably was a incredibly hard decision for Bloodraven to choose Daeron over Daemon.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, it was the attitude until that point that the firstborn gets it, unless the firstborn is judged weak or judged infirm. And Daeron, although not the perfect warrior, was neither. He was fine. And I think things really got out of hand for them. But yeah. I'm sorry, we're starting to diverge from topic.
This is more for the Blackfyre Rebellion stream. We can get all the reasons why the first one happened.
Right. Yeah. No. Totally. Bringing it back in, talking about shame a little bit. As far as this, this man on the Night's Watch that sleeps with this woman, and that somehow feels really bad about it, and flies back to the wall. This was written. What is this from Clash of Kings? This was written in the 90s. My parents used to say, "Oh, I'm just going to fly down there and come back." That means that someone is going very quickly. That doesn't mean that they just, went back to the wall. They flew. One reason that Aemon would do that is because the Lord Commander just disappeared, and his retinue possibly disappeared. So Aemon sleeps with this woman for what could be the first time in his life. I don't know if he was getting any down at the Citadel, but he sleeps with this woman, has a spectacular night, wakes up, and his uncle, the Lord Commander, the guy his brother told him to keep an eye on, is gone. Well, he picks up his cloak and he hightails it back to the wall. But he's probably at this point, and this is tinfoil speculation, he's probably pretty nervous and probably would not put the icing on the cake that, in addition to losing the Lord Commander with the Night's Watch, in addition to losing the guy that his brother told him to keep an eye on, he also broke his vows. He would never admit to that. Yeah, he broke his vows twice.
Because when we think of Aemon, if Aemon fathered a child as both a man of the Night's Watch and as a Maester of the Citadel, then he really doubled down on breaking that vow of celibacy.
Right. Yeah. If that came out, that's a good point. Yeah. If that came out amongst the Watch, I mean, he wouldn't get a slap on the wrist. But if that came out anywhere between the Watch and the Citadel, he would be, because the Watch doesn't take celibacy that seriously, but the Citadel does. So he probably would not mention that part in his letter south or to anybody at the wall if he was smart. So then the woman shows up with the child, and she gets chased away by the horns and the arrows and the crows and everything, because he could never allow that secret to come out. And Maester Aemon is such a nice guy, and he's one of the best characters in the book, which is why it seems like George would do this, make him such a nice guy, because he made some shitty decisions in the past, this being one of them. Of those shitty decisions, we know that he says, again, when John figures out, he goes, "Who are you?" Right? He tells him that his name is Aemon, and that he was named by his father's father for his uncle or his father, depending on which story you believe. So there's that, Aegon Aemon, who's really Daeron's dad, right? But he tells John, about the pitfalls of being, in a noble house. When John says, you'll never know what it's like to be me. And Aemon tells him, right, that the gods saw fit to test his vows 3 times. Once when he was a boy, once when he was in the fullness of manhood, and once when he had grown old. And some people speculated that when he's talking about when he got old, something about Summerhall, that's not what he talks about immediately afterward. He talks about, his family dying, them killing Eris and Rhaegar, and even the little children too. He says that was his realization, or where he didn't speak up when he should have. So this seems like when we're talking about when he was a boy, that was probably the crown that he, when his vows were tested, because he was already a maester at the Citadel, and then he got offered the crown in the prime of his youth at 35. So the first one was probably the crown. The second one, I think, is this child, is when his vows were tested. He really wanted to speak up, and he really wanted to let this woman in, his bastard child, in, but he didn't. Mm-hmm. He didn't break his vow. And it just breaks my heart to think this about Aemon, because George makes him such a good character. And this is how good characters become good characters, is they have an extremely rough patch. So this fits with Aemon's somehow. Going back to Craster, it dawned on me that Craster didn't know already to leave his sons out in the cold. He didn't know that would form some bond with the others. He did that because that's what was done to him. Mm-hmm. He did that because he didn't want to take care of anyone else. He didn't want to serve anyone else or to have to share anything with anyone else. Unless it came to daughters, and that's a whole other thing. But the leaving the kids out, it didn't start with the others. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, it didn't start with Craster. Like, we know that the people, the free folk of the frozen shore, believe in gods of cold and ice. The cave dwellers worship dark underground gods. There are crab gods worshipped at Starld's Point. So right there, we're already seeing the others, as well as the old ones, and even squisher gods all being worshipped in one way or another by one clan or another among the free folk. So Craster is definitely not the first to be making offerings, whether it be livestock or human. Like, no, human sacrifice is something that we know is going on, whether it be to the others or the old gods or these other gods of ice and snow and crabs and squishers and everything else, and all the other Lovecraftian things that George wants to throw north of the wall.
Right. Yeah. So, but again, there's nothing. They talk about sacrifice, but they don't, talk specifically about boys, like baby boys, which is a weird thing. And it fits with Craster's psychology that he would leave his sons out the same way that he was left out. If he can forge for himself, they got to forge for themselves. I don't know what side of the line I even fall on, if I believe that the others are somehow Craster's children, or that the others are consuming Craster's children, whether, it's a new vessel or just a new battery for a new vessel, I'm not sure. But we know that they're taking them as a form of sacrifice, and that they're leaving him alone. So Craster kind of has the same relationship with the others that the Night's Watch have with the wildlings, where they do only what they have to do for the other ones to leave them alone. Now, he doesn't, attack the others, and they don't attack him, because nobody lives through an other attack except for Sam. But, Craster kind of has the same relationship with the others. But getting back to Aemon, I totally forgot where I was going with that. So sorry, give me a second. Do you have anything to add?
I was going to say, where I think that Aemon being Craster's father is special is that's where you get dragon blood being used, or the blood of the dragon being used in the forming of others. Because we don't know exactly how others are created. Now, we saw on the show the way it was, like they took the Craster's son, and Night's King touches him, and he turns into a little baby White Walker. And then I guess we're just led to believe that they kind of just grow up in a day or something, because we never see a baby White Walker again. We just see the few adult White Walkers that show up. But
right.
If we are onto this idea that the others, if there are only a few others, like if there's not a whole society of others and there's just a few, then it's possible that Craster's sons are the ones that are actually becoming the others, while every other sacrifice is just being used as blood. Now, because we told that all magic, at least all powerful magic, is rooted in blood. So it could be that if other free folk are sacrificing their children, those are more of like an energy source, whereas Craster's children having blood of the dragon, even if it's diluted, is what allows them to become like real others rather than just a power source in creating others.
Right. Yeah. And I also think that Craster has the noble blood for many reasons. I mean, his whole thing, it echoes Walder Frey with the daughters of daughters of daughters of daughters, and having a young wife, and everything about this screams like Frey, but in-house. Yeah. And it's really weird, but so much about Craster, even the way he's treated north of the wall by the other wildlings, says nobility. He's got all like the go away parts of being a noble, none of the responsibilities of being a noble. And I think that's life of the wall, or life north of the wall, is that you really don't have to be responsible for anything you don't want to be responsible for, which is him leaving his kids out, to freeze to death, basically. But yeah, so I don't know which side of the line I fall on with this theory, because Craster's dead. He didn't serve any purpose, except this is the first time that Targaryen bastards have been north of the wall, presumably. I can't think of any other Targaryens that got sent to the wall, let alone head bastards beyond the wall.
The closest we would get would be Jace, and if the story of Jace Valerian and Sarah Snow is true.
Oh, right, that's true. So yeah, I'm not sure what this would do for the story besides just connect some of those dots. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'll think of more stuff.
Well, I think the focal point of it is to draw us more to why is Jon important, because Jon, like Craster, if we accept this theory as true and Craster is the son of Aemon and a free folk woman, and he has this blood of the first, like presumably would then mean blood of the first men plus blood of the dragon, if that somehow makes you special. But then Jon also is the same. He has blood of the first men through Lyanna Stark, blood of the dragon through Rhaegar, but also because of these generations of incest that precede to Jon's, because Aegon V is the last Targaryen king to marry outside of the family when he marries Betha Blackwood. But then his son, Jaehaerys, who becomes Jaehaerys II, married his sister. And then his grandson, and this is by order of Aegon V, Aerys II, the Mad King, is ordered to marry his sister because of the prophecy by the Woods Witch, who's, and it seems like if we think that the Woods Witch was sent there by Bloodraven, then it seems like Bloodraven is kind of pruning the family tree to ensure that someone ends up on the throne with this mix of Stark, Targaryen, Blackwood, and Dane blood. Because again, Aegon V is the son of Maekar and Diana Dane, and again, as the last Targaryen king to not have practiced incest. When we get 2 generations of incest, we're holding that, like, we imagine our Punnett squares back in biology. I mean, this isn't perfect genetics. Like George isn't doing that. Like, but the idea is that Dany, but also Jon, would have the blood of the first men, blood of the dragon, but also this Dane blood, which I'm on the boat that the Danes probably were not first men, but rather, or if they are, they're first men of the East, that they probably came from the great empire of the Dawn. And then and then we work that into the whole blood concoction of what makes Jon and Dany so special.
Right. Yeah. They were the first men before the other first men.
Yeah, because we're even told that the Hightowers precede the first men with the traitors that showed up around the Whispering Sound, which is I said that's another stream I want to do. This idea of first men of the East, which would be like Danes, Hightowers, and even the Ironborn, sailing across the suns. The idea of what's west of Westeros. Well, again, unless George decides to throw some North America, South America like continents, it probably is Essos. Like, I can imagine that sailing west from Westeros is probably going to land you on the eastern shores of Essos, where the map's cut off, like somewhere along Mossavi, Ashai, Carcosa, all of that.
Right. Agreed. I don't think, considering the amount of time it takes people just to go from Winterfell to the Wall, I'm assuming that if you sail west, you get to the other side of the map, because it's too much to just go, and that was just these 2 continents of these 7. No, what's going on here affects the entire world, and I think George wrote it that way. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And I think he wants us to think that. At least that is what he wants us to think, especially with Alyssa Farman and the boat that was seen in Ashai.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants us to believe that there's the Orient route, or whatever they called it. So
yeah, just as how when he's been asked, do Westeros and Essos connect, and he says no, but he's never specified what exactly is separating them. Is it an entire ocean, or is it a sea, or is it just like a channel? And then take into account the others being able to freeze. Well, there's a chance. Like, I tend to think of what separates the far north from like the Gray Waste. I think it's akin to like our real world Bering Straits, so what separates Alaska from far eastern Russia. And
it could be ice that connects it.
Yeah, and give it a cold enough temperature, but like the others, maybe they can freeze the gap in between. And that's how you end up with stories of the Long Night, both in Westeros and in Essos.
Most likely, yes. Yeah, totally. I believe that.
But it's a good theory. And I said, I love the theory. I wanted to give time to showcase it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, to give it room to breathe, because when, again, like, this started as a Twitter thread, But when you're locked into that Twitter character limit, and then you got to start a whole chain of threads, it's hard to get details lost. It's a theory that needed room to be allowed to have that room to breathe to get the full ideas out there.
No, I'm so thankful. Yeah, no, it's okay. So going back to it, it's weird, but Craster practicing incest north of the wall seems so unnecessary when we're introduced to it in the books. It seems like in this land of free folk, why would you ever sleep with a family member? Everybody's free to do what they want. What does Mance say? Where a kiss isn't a crime, and a man can wear any cloak he wants. Well, if a kiss isn't a crime, one, how come this person took off after kissing? And two, what is Craster doing? Why does he feel compelled to not leave his area to go get a female wildling of any kind? Under any circumstances, I'm not condoning anything, but I'm just saying, why doesn't Craster, if he's going to be north of the wall, why isn't he going out to get anything? And it just struck me like, no, this is like all of the worst Targaryen traits mixed up into one another. The standoffishness of Aerys II, the prolific nature of Aegon IV, the the incestuous preference of a lot of Targaryen kings. He's a Targaryen. There's, as much as I want to say he's not, it just fits that he is. He's the just the cross the wall exact same narrative of the kings going on this side of the wall, and he acts like a king. He treats himself like a king. He doesn't extend guest right. He knows he acts like a nobleman of a noble house, and I would say that he is, he's definitely a bastard. And I think Aemon's character is enriched, and that's one of the reasons that I can't really get rid of this theory, is that Aemon's character is enriched by having this backstory.
Yeah,
because now like what it is. You could be like, oh shit, that was what you gave up. Like that could have gone differently. Oh man, that should have gone differently.
And it's like as if we couldn't love Maester Aemon anymore to give him that sort of heartfelt backstory. And
right.
I also want to believe, just because, again, we love Maester Aemon, even young Maester Aemon. Plus, Maester Aemon only being a year, or either a year or two, I'm not exactly sure. He's only 2 years older than Aegon V. And we've seen picture, and he greatly resembles his brother. So, young Aemon Targaryen is a handsome man. Or he presumably would have been a handsome man. And so that is why we are going to award Maester Aemon the Foxy Grandpa hat.
Yes.
We bring that up to Maester Aemon. You heard it here, folks. Maester Aemon fucks. Which just makes him even more endearing to us.
Yeah, Maester Aemon the Virgin was interesting, but Maester Aemon that fucks is much better.
Much better. Okay, so that was the Aemon Craster theory, and now we're going to move on to the more meat of our stream topic, which was going to be post-dance dragon seeds, the absolute majority of which come from Aegon IV, Aegon the Unworthy. Now, Aegon IV loses his virginity at age 14 when he's still a prince. It's not. He doesn't wait till he is king to start siring bastards. No, he gets a very early start, and the first bastards we know of that he acknowledged, that are at least acknowledged by him, are 4 daughters by the name of Alysanne, Lily, Willow, and Rosie. And these are daughters by his second mistress, Maguette. And their story's pretty cut and dry. They're all handed over to the faith to serve as septas by his father, Viserys II. And Maguette is returned. Maguette sounds too... it sounds too close to maggot. I'm just gonna say maggot.
Right.
Or we'll
I think it was planned that way. I think it's supposed to sound like maggot.
Supposed to sound like maggot.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, because some of these names are definitely like, you like Beliger Otheris. I get that she was beautiful, but the name is just, it's a bad name. Anyway, go on.
Well, so their story's cut and dry. They're handed over to serve as septas by Viserys II, and Magette is returned to her husband, who is a blacksmith, who tragically beats her to death. Now, serving as septas, they're not really going to serve any importance to the narrative. But what this shows is that Viserys this seems to be more of a character trait that I want to highlight to Viserys II. And Viserys II is another one of these figures that gets glossed over in the same way like his brother Aegon III. Now, a lot of this because we don't have a lot of information. I know you and me speculate on that a lot, as well as Sir Pounce. I made that joke. The three in Aegon III is you, me, and Sir Pounce speculating about his later reign. But his brother Viserys, who will become Viserys II, he's hand before he becomes king for a year. He's hand to his brother and then his brother's two sons. And he does a great job of as hand because he's dealing with his brother's post-traumatic stress disorder and depression from the death of their mother after seeing their mother being eaten alive. He deals with Daemon and his whole war against when he sticks his dick in the Dornish hornet's nest to try and conquer Dorne without dragons. And then he has to deal with Baelor the Blessed and hit all of his fanaticism. But then you add on top of it his own son, Aegon, who's going to become Aegon IV, gallivanting around, just knocking up every woman left and right. And so you got to think of well, if this man's already doing so much for all of these not so great kings, holding the realm together, and then also cleaning up after his own shitty kids' messes. It's like how strained, how stretched thin must this man have been?
Yeah, and to take on everything that went wrong with the reign before his, to try to right all the wrongs in that time and to have all of that against you. I mean, you can only be such a good Targaryen, no matter how many times you flip the coin. I'm sorry. You can't do it all. But conquering Dorne with siege engines across a rocky high mountain desert was the dumbest thing ever. With wooden dragons. Yeah, no, not smart.
And then, so moving on, the next set of bastards, or possible bastards, are the Otheris, or the Otheris trio. And these are their mother is Beliger Otheris, the Black Pearl of Braavos, and possibly fathered by Aegon IV. Now, it's left ambiguous because Beliger is said to have a husband in every port. But of the three, the youngest, the one son, is named Balerion. And this would be Balerion, named for Balerion the Black Dread. And while the parentage is up for dispute, I think the fact that his name is Balerion sort of makes it more plausible that maybe Aegon did father him. Maybe we don't know that. Again, a lot of this, we put on our tinfoil hats. If this boy is named Balerion, it's possible that he may have had some distinctive Valyrian traits that got him that name.
Right. Yeah. No, undoubtedly. Or somebody wanted to, make sure that he stood out as Valyrian. Name him after. It wasn't Balerion named after one of the gods of Valyria. No better way to do that. So
yeah. But I like the point of that because we're on the cusp of House of the Dragon premiering, and we know there's been a whole big uproar about the casting choice for Corlys Velaryon. But George has left the room open with Balerion and the other two, Nara and Bellanora Otheris, that dark-skinned Valyrians can exist, and we might actually have a trio right here, depending, or maybe not all three, but at least one or two of them. Bellinora is, because Bellinora also becomes the Black Pearl after her mother, a courtesan in Braavos, the most beautiful woman in the world, and then that tradition's carried on by her descendants. And we are already told so much about Targaryen beauty, but then also the beauty of Summer Islanders, which Belligear, her mother, would have been Braavosi and Summer Islander.
Right. And then, to strengthen that, that point that those would be specifically important bloodlines, she named all of her daughters some form of Bellinora or Belligear. So even through until today, the modern Belligear, was this? When does she come up? Oh yeah, so she gets called the Daughter of the Dusk in Arya's chapters. The kindly man calls her, the kindly man offers Arya Stark the opportunity to become a courtesan. If she wishes, the faceless man will send her to the Black Pearl, or the Daughter of the Dusk, as she's called. So that's recently. That is Belligear Otherys, the courtesan. So we're not sure if this is the great-granddaughter, great-great-granddaughter. We're not sure who this is, but the naming is the same. So it's giving us that hint that the bloodline is still being tallied. Somebody somewhere is like, no, this is important. You need to keep the naming scheme going.
And then the last name, Otherys. So Otherys is close to others. And again, this is, we see time and time again the idea of groups of people being otherized, such as the free folk. Well, the same would be said of dark-skinned Valyrians, because again, like when people think Valyrians, they immediately gravitate towards this idea of purple eyes, white fair skin, silver golden hair. And it's like, no, if we think Valyria, an empire like the Valyrian Freehold would, with the amount of territory that it covered, it would have been multi-ethnic. And we see this with the 9 free cities. Again, like a lot of the people who want to claim that Valyrians need to be white, pale skin, they hang on to this one line in the World of Ice and Fire about Lys, or because Lys of the 9 free cities has the most traditional Valyrian looking people. But Lys is also the home of Salladhor Saan. Salladhor Saan is not white, fair skinned. He has, and the other thing too is, and if you're going to use Lys as your example, it's like, okay, buddy, well then what about the 8 other free cities and their ethnic makeup, especially Pentos? Pentos, it says, like, has a lot more dark-skinned people, because the idea of keeping the bloodlines pure wasn't as important there. So no, like Valyria and Valyrians, as we know, would have come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Like, they aren't limited to this fair skin, purple eye, silver hair. Like, maybe they could have, like, not all 3 are a prerequisite to be a Valyrian. In fact, none of them are a prerequisite to be Valyrian. It's just that these are just what we tend to think of as traditional Valyrian features.
Right. And George also makes the distinction, because Volantis hails itself as New Valyria in terms of status, wealth, and culture, but then Lys, prides itself on being the most Valyrian in looks and nature and everything else. So even George draws that distinction between the 2 cities. Yeah, people from Lys pride themselves on being the most Valyrian looking, whereas people from Volantis pride themselves on being the most Valyrian acting. So it's already important, and you can see, the value they place on marrying into the free cities, the Rohan of Tyrosh, Serenade of Lys. It's important for some reason. What reason, I'm not 100% on, but it's important, especially with the Blackfyre line. It's like they're doing the same thing, you know, like you said, with the Blackwoods, the Danes, you know, coming down that Pundit Square, just bouncing down the Pundit Square between two families. It's like they're doing the same thing over there.
Yeah.
In Lys.
It's like more Targ than Gary, and that's that's our side band, White Zombie, WIGHT.
Right. It's a good one.
People in the chat, you come here for Austin Smarts and you stay for my terrible jokes. All right, so moving on. So our next bastard would be Aegor Rivers. Now, this is when we get our first bastard. At least, again, we're talking about acknowledged bastards here. Aegor Rivers, Bittersteel, would be the first bastard acknowledged after Aegon IV becomes king. And this is through his fifth mistress, Barbara Bracken.
Right.
And what makes Bittersteel interesting and what separates him from Daemon, who won't be acknowledged for another couple of years, and Bloodraven, is that he is sent away from court. Like Daemon Blackfyre is raised at, and Brynden Rivers are both going to be raised at court. One, because Daemon, not so much because of his father, because again, Aegon IV has not acknowledged Daemon Blackfyre as his own at this point, but he is the son of Daena Targaryen, Daena the Defiant, who is the daughter of Aegon III. And that's what's going to keep. So Daemon Blackfyre didn't necessarily need acknowledgement from Aegon to be at court because his mother is already a Targaryen princess. And Brynden Rivers is going to stay at court because of how much his mother, Melissa Blackwood, ingratiates herself into the court, because even though she's a mistress of Aegon IV, she was actually liked by Daeron the Good and his mother, Nerys. But Bittersteel and his mother, Barbara Bracken, are going to be kicked out of court, and Bittersteel is going to be raised at Stonehenge. So that's our first point of contention between Bittersteel and Bloodraven, along with the age-old Bracken, Blackwood, Hatfield, McCoy feud. Another thing about Bittersteel is, of the three male great bastards, he's going to be the one to not inherit an ancestral Targaryen sword, because Daemon Blackfyre obviously gets Blackfyre, and Brynden Rivers is going to inherit Dark Sister. Now, Aegor may have had, being the son of a king, like there's a chance he may have been gifted some Valyrian steel somewhere down the line, but it's not going to be this great important sword. So that's another outlier against Bittersteel. And so what? And I just want to toss to you, like, what are you got any thoughts on Bittersteel? You're cut out to get your audio's out again.
Yeah. I'm a streamer now, guys.
You muted yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple thoughts on Bittersteel. First off, yeah, he's the first acknowledged after he's become king, but he's also apparently the last to be had before he was king, right? Daeron was 153. Cassella or Daena Targaryen was when was that? When was Daemon born?
Daemon Blackfyre was born.
I know, right? Anyway,
I got the wiki open. It says, okay, Daemon Blackfyre is born in 170 AC.
Okay, yeah, so that's 2 years before he becomes king.
Yes, and Aegon IV is crowned in 172.
Right. So having had Daeron already in 153, I didn't realize Daeron was that much older than
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a 17-year age gap between Daeron and Daemon.
I get it now. Okay, cool. So having Daemon and Aegor being the first ones acknowledged after he became king, but yet the closest to him actually becoming king. So they were born just before and acknowledged just after. Meanwhile, he'd been screwing around for 21 years at this point since Felina Stokeworth.
Yep, since he was 14.
Yeah, good times. Yeah. So with Bittersteel, I think one of the reasons that, and Joe Magician was talking about it this morning, one of the reasons that the Brackens were so hated is because the Blackwoods came in right after. They'd already had the Hatfield and McCoy thing going on. And as Bracken went out, or sorry, was it Blackwood then Bracken?
It went Bracken, then a Blackwood, then another Bracken. That's the order it went in of mistresses.
That's right. Okay, well, I had the feeling that the Brackens were disliked, especially in retrospect, once Blackwood came in. Was that Melissa Blackwood?
Melissa Blackwood.
Or was that? Yeah, once she came in, then, everything turned on the Brackens. So I think Aegor Rivers just suffered from the attitude about his mother and the attitude about his family. There was nothing different about him than any of the other great bastards at all. But I think he just suffered from being a Bracken. But yeah,
nobody likes the Brackens.
It's true. It's really, really true. Yeah, no other thoughts on Aegor until we move forward just a little bit. Again, I think Aegor was the brother that Bloodraven hated for sure.
Oh,
I don't think that was the brother he loved at all.
No, definitely not.
No.
All right, so then moving on. So Aegor Rivers is born of Barba Bracken, the 5th mistress. The 6th mistress is then Melissa Blackwood. And she's going to give Aegon the Unworthy 3 bastard children. The most famous, of course, is Bloodraven. And then there's also 2 sisters that we never really hear about, Maya and Gwyneth Rivers. And
right.
And George has a habit of this where he's admitted in like these So Spaketh Martins that he kind of tends to forget a lot about the female line sometimes. Like daughters sometimes. The outlier on there is going to be the Blackfyres, but daughters just seem to kind of come and go. So we're not given any information about Maya and Gwyneth and what exactly happened to them. At least with the other 4, Rosie and Lily and Alice, at least we know what happened to them. They become septas of the faith, but we have nothing on Maya and Gwyneth.
Right. I think to that point, I think that they, as far as that bloodline being dangerous, I think they're considered less. I think we'll get back to that at the end when we start talking about Meleys, Aenies, and the Blackfyres. Once they got to Essos, that we see is, we start wondering, is there anything special about the female line of Blackfyres? Because that's where the Fagon theory comes in, is that he's descended from the female side. Mm-hmm. But we can talk about why that might not even be correct when we get to it. But yeah, sorry, continue.
It's just that, and this is, again, like, I don't like knocking other people's theories, but I'm just going to say, like, when everyone has the idea of a secret Targaryen, I feel like a lot of that comes from Aegon IV. Like, we can blame this one man for a lot of this whole secret Targaryen idea because of how widespread his children are and because of how all of these unaccounted for bastards. What ends up happening is anyone who even has the slightest tinge of Valyrian features, like anyone with the silver hair or a dark blue eye, all of a sudden becomes secret Targaryen. But at least it found that line from the Mystery Night when Bloodraven is masquerading as Maynard Plum. And Duncan the Tall says, well, if we believe half these stories, then we are all bastards of Aegon IV. And then Maynard responds with, who's to say we're not? And
right.
And on a narrative level, this is Bloodraven pulling back the curtain to show us as the reader that, like, hey, this Maynard Plum guy is Bloodraven in disguise. But on a more surface level, it's like, yeah, maybe we all are, because of just how many there are and how many we don't know what happened to. The man himself claims to have fathered 900 children by his own estimate. And Aegon IV is a lot of things, but I don't think he's lying about that. He seems like the type of man who would be very, very proud of saying, I have 900 children. I don't know who they are or where they are, and I don't really care much about a lot of them, but I have them.
Right.
Like that's bragging rights for a man like Aegon IV.
Definitely. Somebody just in the chat brought up something about the knife. Who is that? Said that. Peter Windhorst. There was something. Yeah, there was something about the knife, because there's been speculation in the House of the Dragon trailer that we see the cat's paw dagger in House of the Dragon. And the reason that I thought that this might be important is because when you were talking about, not getting ancestral blades, I think that's the third blade. I think that the dragon must have 3 heads. I think there's Blackfyre, there's Dark Sister, and then there's the cat's paw dagger. I think this was Visenia's? No, Visenya was whichever one had Dark Sister, the other one. Do you remember who wielded Dark Sister?
It was Visenya who wielded Dark Sister.
Okay, then the other sister got the dagger. But I do believe that there are three ancestral blades. And getting this toothpick when you could be getting Blackfyre would probably piss a lot of people off. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's just my headcanon. And I think if Bittersteel got the dagger, that's how it got thrown into the wind, pretty much, because he would take it and literally throw it out the window.
Now, have you heard the theory that maybe there was that Bright Roar perhaps was the third Targaryen sword, and that it was the Targaryen? There's that theory. There's that saying that Lannister gold would bring about the end of Valyria, and we know that when Daenerys the Dreamer has her vision and her I'm blanking on her father's name, but the one
not Aenys, but yeah,
I know the one who hightailed it out of there and moved everyone to Dragonstone. Well, eventually the Lannisters are going to get a Valyrian steel sword, Bright Roar, and if there's this prophecy that says that that Lannister gold will bring about the doom of Valyria, then it seems less likely that a Valyrian is going to be in mind to sell them. But this is built on the whole the doom was an inside job. Maybe it was Daenerys the Dreamer's father who sold the Lannisters a Valyrian steel sword and then used the gold. Thank you, Aenar. Maybe Aenar sold Bright Roar to the Lannisters and then used that gold to fund the Faceless Men. And
right.
The backbone to the doom was an inside job theory.
I have heard that theory, and I like that theory a lot. I just like to go. I just like to think that they go small, medium, large for some reason, or small, medium, large.
Tall, grande, venti.
Yeah, and that gave me the idea that if Blackfyre is a 2-handed longsword and Dark Sister is a shorter, meaner, kind of Nazgul blade length-ish, 2/3 sword, that the dagger would be the other one. But yeah, somebody was saying that in the chat, and I did want to bring that up, that if Bittersteel did get an ancestral blade, but it was the little one, that's how that one got lost. that's how it got thrown into the wind, because he would want nothing to do with it. He would give it away to the nearest person at the drop of a hat.
If Bittersteel got the little one and now he's compensating for something.
Yeah, like no wonder he's so mad for the rest of his life. He got the little, sorry, man.
Not to mention, then there's we're gonna get to her, but Brynden Rivers and Bittersteel fight over Shiera Seastar, but we can only one, at least as far as we know, only one actually got in her bed, and it wasn't Bittersteel.
Right. It was, if we're correct that Bloodraven was sterile, then that's probably why she chose to sleep with Brynden instead of Bittersteel. We're later on, I'm sure we're going to assume that Aegor or Bittersteel and Kala had kids. Yeah, we're going to assume that they had some children. So again, that Bittersteel wasn't sterile.
Yeah, again, like there's just like we have no evidence for it, but it's just a gut feeling that Bloodraven was. I don't know if it's because of his albinism or what, but it's just this gut feeling that the man was shooting blanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's said that they slept together for a long time, or that they shared the same bed for many years leading up to the whole rivalry between him and Bittersteel. Yeah. So,
I mean, but Shiera's also said to have had many lovers. Like the poets all had to outdo one another writing of her beauty. So, but I don't think even if she was having many lovers, I don't know if the human body can handle that much tansy tea to warrant her not having children. Like we've seen what one abortion did to Leza Tully when Hoster Tully made her drink the tansy tea. So the idea of someone doing that over and over and over, I guess Asha Greyjoy would be our only real example of someone who's imbibed it multiple times to prevent children. But even then, we really don't know how many times she's drunk it.
I mean, that which is dead can never die, right?
Oh.
So,
Asha taking
the Ironborn
extreme.
Yeah, the Ironborn are just a different breed. We're not going to take anything that happens to the Ironborn as this is the human threshold for anything.
Well, actually, in our notes, I guess, because since we're starting with the acknowledged bastards before we go to the rumored bastards, Shiera Seastar would have been the next one after Brynden Rivers. So Brynden Rivers is mothered by Melissa Blackwood, who is the 6th mistress. The 7th mistress does not give him any children. That is Bethany Bracken, and she's the one who couldn't stand his touch and instead started sleeping with one of the Kingsguard, Terrence Toyne. She sleeps with Terrence Toyne, and that's what. And Terrence Toyne is hacked to pieces. She's put to death, and that's the last we really hear about Brackens at court.
Right. Yep. And they kill her dad. Yep. Everybody.
So Shiera Seastar would be our last acknowledged bastard. Then we go to the rumored bastards. One of which, and this is the real squick factor, his 8th mistress, Lady Jane Lothston, who is the daughter of his first mistress, Felena Stokeworth, the woman who took his virginity at age 14. So now, if we go on the accepted narrative, Jane Lothston is supposed to be, her father should be Lord Lucas Lothston, but there are those who insist that she was fathered by Aegon himself. And this could be rumor. We know that the small folk love a good dirty rumor, but it could be true. Now, incest among the Targaryens is nothing new to us, but it's usually in the context of brother, sister, cousins, uncle, niece, aunt, nephew. Actual father, daughter, mother, son aren't really seen. Like that seems, even among the Targaryens, that still kind of seemed to be taboo.
Yeah, that's a little rough.
If Jane Lothston is in fact another bastard of Aegon, and Aegon is sleeping with her, then that just goes to show just a whole new level of depravity of Aegon the Fourth.
I mean, that's when it said that physically he switched gears from being, a product of vice and, just shittiness to being overall shitty himself. Her mother couldn't even stand him. So, I mean, yeah, things took a turn at that time.
Because when he has Jane Lothston as a mistress, this is following the death of at his order of Bethany Bracken, and this is Aegon the Fourth at his worst, and this is him at his fattest, his most grotesque, his most cruelest. This is when this is happening, and then the last is his ninth mistress, Serene of Lys, who, God bless her, how she even stomached that, because when Serene of Lys enters the picture, that's when Aegon the Fourth has gotten so bad that he's like covered in his own shit stains, and is living with worms.
Not that it would help, but my headcanon on this one is that she was able to glamour him so that she didn't notice.
She put on her.
There had to be magic. Yeah, exactly. Her magical beer goggles, or to take a potion or something that'll just make this whole experience not as terrible as it is in some form or fashion.
Or she's just reminding herself the entire time, like, he's a king, he's a king, he's a king. You're gonna get a keep out of this.
Yeah.
Like
putting in work for the future. Yep.
It's the way you probably imagine that we would imagine that most what we see, like, not to sound sexist or misogynist, but when we see like the gold digger women that are going after the old rich man with a bum ticker, like somehow you just will yourself to get through the act because of what's going to await you in the future.
Yeah, right. I mean, the closer he is to the end, that could have been it. I mean, she probably saw him as so disgusting and so huge that this guy isn't going to last very long. And if I get in here now, this is the ground floor. If I'm the last one that he's with, everything goes to me. This is for all the chips, this one. So who knows? Maybe she was poisoning him at the same time.
Yeah. All right. And then moving on, our next rumored bastard would be Viserys Plum. Again, like, if we trust the narrative, he's supposed to be the son of Lord Ossifer Plum and Aelena Targaryen. Aelena Targaryen would be another daughter of Aegon III, just like Dana the Defiant, so another one of Aegon's cousins. But Lord Ossifer Plum was very aged. Like, he's like in his 70s when they're wed. And it's said that he died in the marriage bed after seeing his bride naked, yet she's still able to conceive. So is it possible? Like, no. But then so the rumor is that he's fathered by Aegon, and we get further confirmation that that's more than likely the case when we get our current Plum, Mr. Brown Ben Plum, who claims to have a drop of dragon blood in him. When he says,
and Tyrion says 2.
2.
2, or your ancestor had a 6-inch or a 6-foot.
6-foot cock.
Yeah.
Yep. Because we know for certain, no matter who Viserys Plum's real father is, he definitely is part Targaryen, being mothered by Aelena. Right. But Ben Plum says, like, one of the Aegons, and Danny even asks him who, and he's like, I don't know. There were so many. He can't even remember which Aegon it was.
Right. But that would make Viserys Plum full-born Targaryen. That not even, and just bastard by lack of marriage between Aelena and Aegon. But he would have been full-blooded Targaryen at that point.
But that just goes to show, like, sometimes how a bastard will inherit, because without DNA tests to show us, and this, again, I think this is supposed to make us think of Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen. You're bastard through and through, but what matters is whose family name are you holding? Well, you can't be proven that Ossifer Plum isn't your father, but you're given the name Plum, and that's all that matters. So now you're entitled to all of House Plum's holdings.
Right. Right. And then he did that. Didn't he take all of House Plum's holdings? Or no,
yes,
that was
oh no,
that
he becomes Lord. And when Bloodraven disguises himself as Maynard Plum, he is claiming relations to Viserys Plum.
Right.
So that's
a cousin
how
of a
he's
cousin or
that
something.
line. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I like too that, okay, so of the unacknowledged bastards, and Viserys was born in 172, Viserys Plum. Of all that, if all the speculation is true, Viserys Plum is his only familial son, because Daemon could have been Aemon's. So if Daemon was Aemon's, and then all the subsequent bastards were Aegon's with non-Targaryen women, oh, I guess Dana and then Elena. Mm-hmm. So yeah, his two full-blooded sons would be Daemon and Viserys. Mm-hmm. Which is, I don't know. Do you think that Aemon was Daemon's father?
I actually do. Yes, I am of the opinion that Daeron the Good was the son of Aemon the Dragon Knight and not Aegon the IV. And because what makes that interesting is that if we hold that to be true, that Daeron the Good is the son of Aemon, then the whole Blackfyre rebellion, the first one, it becomes a battle of two bastard kings. Like the people that are the Targaryen loyalists are unknowing. It becomes like the loyalists are loyal to the unknown bastard, whereas the Blackfyre rebels are loyal to the known bastard. But it becomes like this whole splitting hair things. But again, what is important here is not the parentage so much, but it's whose name do you hold. Daeron is holding the family name of Targaryen. And it's interesting that Aegon IV, he threatened multiple times to disinherit Daeron, but he never actually went through with it. And so it seems like for as bad of a king as Aegon was, he knew that disinheriting him would still be political suicide.
Right. And that's that comes back to the whole like making the family look weak thing. Like you've been on a heater here, and it's obvious that you want to pick Daemon. That's obvious, but he stuck to Daeron because you don't want the family to seem weak. Once you start changing up the rules about who's next in line, of course he did that at the end of his life, but Daeron was already king. He couldn't walk it back from there, as I mean, could he though? He might have been able to, but just legitimizing his bastards was terrible enough. Which is something I'm not even sure the reasoning behind doing that. Why would you give? Why? He fucked the realm over for the next how many hundreds of years? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, Aegon IV just seems like when it came to the end of his life was probably like, well, if I'm going down, I'm taking you all with me. He definitely seems like he would be that spiteful to do something like that.
Right. Sorry, I was just reading stuff in the chat. Sorry, yeah, go on.
All right, and then to the last of our rumored bastards, and this one's not even more a rumor, but just seems to fit, Ambrose Butterwell. Because now we're told that Aegon IV, while feasting and staying the night at White Walls, offered the Lord Butterwell at the time a dragon egg in exchange for sleeping with his 3 daughters. And it said that he fathered children among all 3 of them in one night. Again, like this is a very, very potent man we're talking about.
Right.
Yes, again, Carl Karsnark, something that I'm not going to be. But so then...
What a jerk, Carl. I'm just kidding.
But then when we get to the second Blackfyre rebellion, Ambrose Butterwell is there, and he is the prize of the tourney is this dragon egg that his grandfather held. Now, if Aegon the IV fathered children among Lord Butterwell's daughters, that Ambrose Butterwell would be one of those bastard grandsons. So it seems to line up very well that he may have been another unacknowledged bastard of Aegon the IV.
Okay, so two things. First, sorry, not to correct you, but this does help. He didn't host him at White Walls. It said King Aegon presented the egg to his father's father after guesting for a night at his old castle. Now, this is where I was getting wrapped up in Joe Magician's stream. It was Lord Haraway's town was what the Butterwells inherited before building White Walls. So their little area, their little responsibility, hamlet, village, town, whatever, was Lord Haraway's town. And so they had some sort of castle there. Now, Lord Haraway's town is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Harrenhal. And if we're correct that Ambrose Butterwell is the son of Aegon IV, Ambrose was born in 161, which so Aegon was going to Harrenhal to be with Felina Stokeworth anyway since 149, and it said that he continued to go there, and that's the only other line. That's just the one other line is that he, Felina Stokeworth bragged about. Did she brag about taking his V card or something? Yeah. Anyway, it tells the year, and then it says that he continued to go there. So 10, 12 years, that's not really a stretch that he would still be visiting Felina Stokeworth. This is 10 years before he ascended the throne. This is the timing fits, and Lord Haraway's town is just that smidge away from Harrenhal. So you can kind of see that he would be going through there. I mean, if you're in the area, right, he probably, would hit up whoever in Lord Haraway's town. Mm-hmm. And that was the Butterwell's lands. That was the Butterwell's lands gifted after the dance. So, the question, and somebody actually, there's a good Westeros.org post about this very subject, but somebody wanted to say that the post says, and I can't remember who does it for the life of me, but the poster was saying that Ambrose is actually, we're getting it all from Maynard Plum in the book, right? He's saying King Aegon presented the egg to his father's father after guesting a night at his old castle. Bloodraven doesn't lie necessarily much. In fact, he tells the truth a lot of the time. He just tells the truth in a funny way. But in this case, I don't think Bloodraven would necessarily want to just be like, oh yeah, by the way, nobody's ever heard this one, but Ambrose could be another bastard of Aegon IV. That's the last thing Bloodraven would say. He's not looking to acknowledge or legitimize anybody that already hasn't been acknowledged or legitimized at all. He's not looking to shine another light on another bastard. So it makes sense that he would lie.
Yeah. At most, he's giving, again, it's that line when Duncan the Tall says, like, if half these stories were true, we're all bastards Aegon the IV, and he says, who's to say we're not? Like, that's he is giving a little bit of subtlety to that, but he's not naming anyone specific. Again, because of how far-reaching the bastards of Aegon the IV are, because of just how numerous they are. Like, it really could be.
And I think the other point that the Westeros post brought up was, why did he spare Butterwell? He killed Peake. He let Cockshot die. Like, he was watching Dunk kill Cockshot. He killed Peake and beheaded a couple other people. But from Butterwell, he took, he left him 1/10 of his land, and he left him his new wife, which is interesting. I mean, he could have just killed Butterwell and been like, I mean, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, and I'm going to cut your head off, is not beneath Bloodraven. So the fact that this is the second time Butterwell was shitty, right? Because he was Master of Coin previously to Aegon IV, or no, Hand of the King. Was he Hand of the King or Master of Coin? One of both, actually. Sorry.
Ambrose Butterwell. He was Master of Coin for Aegon IV, and he was Hand of the King for a little while for Daeron the Good, but he sucked at the job. Yeah.
And everybody thought that he was a traitor because he also had one foot in each camp, which, and again, is like saying I'm related to both people. But the part where this gets really stupid is that, that Bloodraven doesn't kill Ambrose. He lets him go. Because I don't think, in my headcanon, I don't think Bloodraven wants to kill his brothers. I don't think he wants to be a kinslayer. It's his brothers in particular. He killed Daemon's sons first. You know what I mean? He wasn't trying to kill his brother first.
But did he? That's the thing, because Daemon...
That's true.
Daemon Blackfyre and his sons, the twin boys, Aegon and Aemon, they're killed by arrows. But it's not like Bloodraven wasn't the only one loosing arrows. He had the whole Raven's teeth. Right. So maybe it was Bloodraven's arrow that hit them. Maybe it wasn't. There's an air of plausible deniability that Bloodraven has when it comes to who killed Daemon Blackfyre and who killed his twin sons. Now, 80s Blackfyre is when the waters get a bit more muddied, when he shows up at the Great Council of 233. But even then, Bloodraven has him killed. He hasn't beheaded. But did Bloodraven do it himself, or did he just give the order? If he, again, now giving the order is probably just as much as doing it, but at least Bloodraven can maybe deny that to himself, like, well, I didn't do it by my own hand, so it doesn't count. Now, Aegon V isn't going to see that because that's the pretext used to send him to the wall.
Right. I mean, it's cut and dry. That one was public opinion sent Bloodraven to the wall. I'm sure Aegon would have just happily said, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he had to do something to him. He had to kill him, basically. But going to the wall was the next best thing. That's the equivalent. But the
whole point with Aenys is that whether Bloodraven killed Aenys Blackfyre himself or just gave the order, he still did deny guest right, because he offered Aenys safe passage and then reneged on it
and then killed him. Right. Nobody cares. Right. Well, nobody cares when Robert Baratheon killed his cousin Rhaegar. I don't think kinslayer is like cousins or nephews and nieces and anything like that. I think kinslayer is definitely like brother on brother, parents, that kind of thing. I would call Tyrion a kinslayer because he literally killed his dad willingly.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call Robert Baratheon a kinslayer. I might call Stannis a kinslayer. But I like cousins. It doesn't matter. That's far enough out.
It kind of gets to the point where it depends. Like when we get to the real nitty gritty, like in specifics of that, it starts to become like, well, what's your interpretation? Like how far removed is family to the point where you don't necessarily consider them family anymore? Is it cousins? Is it second cousins? Is it third cousins? Like who's to say? That becomes your own. That becomes part of your own personal belief system, like how far kinslaying extends. But it's a hard road to walk, especially when we're talking nobility and how intertwined everyone is. I'm like, even if we're not like Targaryen incest is one thing, but even the other nobility, for a lot of the time, they're still marrying a cousin or a second cousin a lot of the time. Like even like we see Squick with Jaime and Cersei, but keep in mind though that their parents, Tywin and what's their mother's name?
Joanna.
They're cousins.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's I think that cousins. Yeah. I think that the rules extend to siblings and parental units. Sorry, but to get back to Ambrose, the silliest part of the whole thing is his name is Ambrose. Him and Bloodraven are bros. They am bros. Like, when I thought about it, I was like, no way. No. George wouldn't name somebody Ambrose because he's somebody's brother. Would he do that? And the more I try to delete that thought from my brain, it's right there going, nope, they're bros. Yep.
And Mater knows the pieces fit because he watched them fall away.
Exactly. It just stood out that George is just having a laugh with people. It's there if you want to pluck it.
Oh, I love George's just the sneaky way he puts in just like movie and music references. Like, again, I said it like during the Joe Magician stream, when we think of Aegon the Fifth's wife, Betha Blackwood, how she made all these marriage licenses for her children, but they broke them all. And it's like, well, in a way, you could say that Black Betty had a child, the damn thing gone wild, because they all broke the marriage alliances she made with them.
That's pretty good.
George does all that, and we're even going to go on that again when we get to our next one, because now we're moving past Aegon the Fourth to our next set of Targaryen bastards, which are the twin bastards of Aelena Targaryen with Alan Oakenfist, one of whom is named John Waters. And then there's that famous filmmaker, Pink Flamingos, Hairspray, John Waters. So this could be this just seems like another bit of George just having fun with names. And what
now? Sorry, is John Waters from Jersey, or he's from Baltimore, isn't he? I was thinking, like, if he's from Jersey, of course this is a John Waters joke, but he might be from Baltimore. I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with anything. I'm sorry.
John Waters was born and raised in Baltimore. John Waters, the filmmaker.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
John Waters, the bastard, is born in King's Landing.
Right. Which is pretty much Baltimore, depending on what part of King's Landing you live in. Yeah.
But what we know of John Waters is he becomes a famous knight in his own right, and then he has his own son, a trueborn son, who would change the name to Longwaters to remove the taint of bastardy. And then the name of Longwaters continues. The under jailer of the Red Keep is Yennefer Longwaters, who claims to be descended from a Targaryen princess, but nobody believes him.
Oh, well, yeah, of course I believe him right off the bat. Longwaters, I got your back, man. Also, I don't think he fought for that job. I feel like he didn't. I feel like that job got assigned to him because he has a drop of dragon's blood, because he told the wrong person the rumor that he was descended from a Targaryen princess. I think that's why he's the undergoaler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's the goaler under the goaler.
But Yennefer Longwaters being around also just kind of goes to show that, like, Robert Baratheon, you missed a few. They're still they're not full-fledged Targaryens, but again, the because of Aegon the Fourth, and actually no, because this one isn't even Aegon the Fourth. He had nothing to do with creating the Longwaters line. This is Aelena Targaryen and Oakenfist. And Oakenfist himself is a bastard, supposedly the bastard of Laenor Valerian, but we know it's Corlys. We know it's Corlys. That's Corlys' son.
Right. So again, more full-blooded Targaryen kids going in the wind there.
Yeah, or full-blooded Valyrian in this case.
Full-blooded Valyrian, yeah, you're right.
Well, I guess it would depend on Mouse, the mother of Oakenfist. We don't really know her heritage, but
but they would both have.
He'd be at least he'd be at least 3/4 Valyrian through Oakenfist and Aelena. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Again, like, we gotta think our Punnett squares. They aren't perfect, but we can kind of imagine them. And
yeah, right.
And he also had a twin sister, Jane Waters. Again, like, the females, the daughters kind of tend to get lost among history, but yeah, twin twin bastards by the name of Waters, by the name of Alan Valerian. And what's important here is that Elena was hoping to marry Oakenfist, but Oakenfist becomes lost at sea, which is a whole other story that I hope that it's another untold tale that I hope that we eventually get if we're ever to get a Fire and Blood 2. It's like, where was Oakenfist? Where was he headed? And why didn't he ever return?
Right. And does Oakenfist float? Is my question. Because he could still be out there somewhere. He could have washed up somewhere.
And then, so those are the bastards of Elena. And then, before we move on to the Blackfyres, we do want to touch upon what's known Brightflame theory, because we're told now this is the rumored bastards of Aerion Brightflame, Aegon V's sadistic older brother. After he loses his trial after losing the trial by 7 against Duncan the Tall, Maekar sends him away, and he finds himself in Lys, and he serves with the Second Sons for a while. Eventually, he's going to return to Westeros because we know he fights in the third Blackfyre rebellion. But in his time away, again, in another So Spaketh Martin, Martin says that Aerion fathered some bastards during his time in Essos, during his time among the Free Cities. Now, where exactly these guys play into the story is up for debate, but it's still worth at least touching upon this idea of this third line of Targaryen bastards, Blackfyres, and the Brightflame children that could possibly be running around Essos.
Right.
But one thing that that we need to keep in mind is that it's said that he fathered them, that he went to Lys, and we've already touched upon how Lys has the highest populace of people with, quote, traditional Targaryen features, and this would include people like Serenay of Lys, the Rogaire family, Massaria, Lady Misery, and then in our current timeline, there's Lisono Mar, the spy master of the Golden Company. Based on looks alone, you could argue that Lisono might be one of these products of Targaryen bastardry, rather it be, and possibly even Brightflame. Really, though, it seems more like Lisono Mar's purpose in the story is to be a focal point for Arianne Martell, of what a Targaryen would look like and what she should expect Fagon to look like when she meets him. And also what she would have expected Viserys to look like had Doran Martell's plan actually work. But Doran Martell's plan failed because Doran Martell's plans always fail. That seems to be Doran his Martell role in this. Sucks. Doran Martell's plans. That is where I see Doran Martell's point in the story, is that this is a man who planned who was as meticulous as he could be and still failed. Like, all of his plans fail. And they fail because they're too secret. Because he keeps
he's all talk, no action. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all planning, no follow through. No nothing. Follow through. Meanwhile, his brother is everything. He's a maester, he's a second son, he's a this, he's a that. He's all action, no planning. Mm-hmm. And Doran is all planning, no action. So
yeah, that's why the oranges are ripe.
So I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up, but because we're not gonna be able to touch on this again, only because we don't know who Meleys the Monstrous's parents are. Mm-hmm. Right, that's still unknown. This is 100 years after. 100 years after Aerion was sent to Lys. And then, of course, 40 years before Daemon Blackfyre was sent to Lys. So Aerion Brightflame was sent in what year to Lys? I'm sorry. Oh, he's sent to Lys in 210. Oh, shoot. Okay, so when he was in Lys, he fought with the Second Sons. Mm-hmm. And then during that time, he preferred to be called Aerion the Monstrous. So that leads me to believe that maybe Meleys was Aerion's bastard.
Mm.
And the immediate reason to dispute this is because the World Book says that who says it? Varys says that the Blackfyre line ended with Meleys.
It was Illyrio who says that the male line died
Illyrio.
with Meleys.
Yeah, sorry. Somebody's talking to Tyrion and says that the male line died with Meleys. But it could be a play on words because Meleys kills Daemon III. If Daemon III was the last of the Blackfyre line, the Blackfyre line ended with Meleys because he killed Daemon III.
It wasn't Daemon the Third. It's Daemon the Third died in the fourth Blackfyre.
Or not Daemon the Third, just unnamed Daemon.
It's just a Daemon, a captain general named Daemon that Meleys killed to take his job. Turkish Jerem.
Right. So if that Daemon was the last Blackfyre, then the Blackfyre line in the male side ended with Meleys by killing this Daemon. So Illyrio could be just saying the line ended when Meleys ended it.
Yeah. Ooh, that's interesting. And again, it will come back to what we're saying. Like, well, what's important, the actual parentage or the name? Like, what? But Meleys still holds the last name Blackfyre, and that's what becomes important about him.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it could be that part of that Black Flame idea where they know that they have the Targaryen blood in Lys. So they would maybe try to, do something about that. Although I don't know how they would feel about getting together with one of Aerion's kids. But if it's Aerion's kids, who knows?
Yeah.
But so when Aerion comes back from Lys, he has Maegor, right? With Daenora. Maegor. I'm okay. So if we're continuing the rhyme scheme of Aemon, Aegon, Daeron, Daemon, Maegor, Meleys, to me, in my head, I think Meleys might have been Aerion's bastard in Lys. I'm something just rubs me the wrong way about Meleys being a Blackfyre. Yes, he had the name, but maybe that's because Calla was married to Aegor Rivers. He did have another daughter over there, though. I don't know. I don't know how that one fits. I'm not sure about that one at all, but it just doesn't fit. Meleys doesn't fit as a Blackfyre except for the part that he led a rebellion.
And the fifth Blackfyre rebellion is more like a small part in the greater overarching War of the Nine Penny Kings. But the timeline, if we look at the timeline, so if Aerion is sent to Lys in 210, and we know he returns to Westeros by 219, because that's when the third Blackfyre rebellion takes place, and Aerion fights in the third. So that gives him at a maximum of a 9-year span in Lys. And Meleys is killed in 260. And Meleys, from the artwork that we've seen of Meleys, he looks old. Like he looks like he looks like evil Santa. So if Meleys is being born sometime between 210 and 219, and then dying in 260, it's plausible for Meleys. It fits that Meleys could have been born in one of those years. Like if we use 215 as an example year, that would make him 45 when he died, and if given what he looks like, that would fit.
Right, and then he does it. He comes back and he has Maegor in 232, much later on. So yeah, as far as Aerion having Brightflame bastards or Blackflame even, right? If he when was so when did Daemon have kids? Because could Aerion have gotten with one of, or is that much later on? If Aerion's over there in 210,
Let's see. Aegon Blackfyre would have been the oldest of the twins.
Right.
And
oh yeah,
he's
no,
born
and they were
in 184 AC. So, and Daemon was born in 170. So Daemon's just like his father. He gets started early at age 14
right.
producing kids.
So it's not out of the question that when Aerion got sent to list that there was, you know, some Daemon's daughters. These he had an unknown number of daughters.
Yeah, he had at least 9 children, 7 sons and 2 daughters, and of those 9, only 6 are named. Like we have 2 sons, we have 2 Blackfyre sons of Daemon that are unaccounted for, and an unaccounted for daughter, which we're going to get to into the Blackfyre. But before we go to the Blackfyres, I do want to touch upon Aerion's. He's not a bastard, but his trueborn son Maegor. Because Maegor, little baby Maegor, disappears from the narrative. Like we know, he's born in 232. A couple months later, his dad drinks Aerion Brightflame, drinks the wildfire, thinking he'll turn into a dragon. He dies, obviously. 233, the peak Maekar is killed in the peak uprising, and this great council is called because we have a succession, our classic Targaryen succession crisis. This is when Maester Aemon is kind of on the down low, offered the position of king, but gives it up, and we get Aegon V. But one of the other claimants is one of the names put forward is Maegor. Now he's passed over because he's an infant, and that would lead to
he's one.
Right. This would be a very long regency, and we've seen just in the last parts of Fire and Blood, Aegon III only had like a 4-year regency, and we saw just how bad things could get mucked up in 4 years. So a 17-year long regency can lead to a whole host of problems. And then, of course, he's passed over because of who his dad is and who he was named over. Who he was named after. And so we get Aegon V. Now, Aegon V, his reign is for as good of a king as much as we love Egg, his reign is very troubled. He's dealing with numerous rebellions. We got the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion. There's the rebellion led by the Laughing Storm when Duncan the Small breaks his betrothal. There's numerous problems in the Westerlands because of Tytos Lannister being weak. Then there's also this rebellion of the Rat, the Pig, and the Hawk. And this takes place in 251 AC. And tragically, Aegon V's son, Daemon, is killed during this. Daemon was the one who was originally betrothed to Olenna Tyrell, who would be Olenna Redwine at this point. If we take the timeline at 251 AC, Maegor would be about 18, 19 at this point. So one theory that I've had is maybe Maegor, like now teenage young adult Maegor, maybe he was one of these 3, the Rat, the Pig, or the Hawk, that leads this rebellion, trying to trying to take the throne like he couldn't when he was an infant. Again, I got nothing to base it on, but just the fact that the timeline how the timeline lines up with this rebellion in 251, and if it's true, if Maegor was one of those 3, killing his leading to the death of his cousin Daemon, that would make him again, depending on our definition of kinslayer, killing a cousin might make him a kinslayer in the same way that Maegor the Cruel, who he's named after, killed his son Aegon the Uncrowned. So just as a matter of timeline, it seems to fit. Like we won't know until we get Fire and Blood 2 or a couple Dunk and Egg novels, but just as a timeline of what happened to little baby Maegor, this could be it. He could have led his own. He had the claim. He was the son of an older brother compared to Aegon, so he does actually have the precedence. He just didn't have the ability to really push his claim by the fact of being a baby at the time.
Right.
Just
didn't we see the rat, the pig, and the hawk again years and years and years later?
Actually, I believe they assaulted. I'm not sure the exact year, but there was a mask, a ball, where they assault one of the daughters of Rhaegal, who was the
so it's Aelora that they attack.
And she was the daughter of Rhaegal, who was another one of these Targaryens said to have Targaryen madness. He was the one that would dance naked around the Red Keep, and the one who had a breakdown. He had a breakdown when his son passed away and would dress a monkey. He got up in his son's clothing.
That's totally normal. That's I think George took that directly out of like a English monarchy history, because that sounds familiar.
Again, like if we're speculating, like Rhaegal to me might have, was it Targaryen madness, or was it just a grieving father who couldn't cope? Like when we think of that, yeah.
Well, the only thing with that is she died in 221, and she died of the actions that happened at the ball. Apparently, at least that's what George makes it sound like. So the rat, the hawk, and the pig were there, but I think that I don't think they would have been the same people 30 years apart.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It could, because if it's just people wearing masks, then anyone can pick up that mantle.
Right, and there's that, that brazen beasts carryover that you don't really know who somebody is if everybody's wearing masks all the time.
Another theory I've heard about little baby Maegor is that he may have grown up to become the Smiling Knight who fought Sir Arthur Dayton. Yeah. That's
a good point, yeah.
But that would make him much older for him to be that one.
That's true. I have it in my head that the Smiling Knight was, I think, either a Dane or a Stark, if you believe that the Dane sword was the original Stark blade. Because, he said, all I want is that sword, right? So I think that there was a connection between the sword and the Smiling Knight that leads to his heritage somewhere in there. Maegor, though. Oh, God, who was his mom? Oh, Daenora Targaryen. And then what happened to her? She died shortly thereafter. Yeah, it's really unclear, but I feel like it could be a whole nother story on the side. Because he's won when he got passed over, and they were never going to come back to him. So what would happen to royalty at that point? Would he get sent to Lys? Would he get sent to one of the outlying islands? Would he get sent back to Dragonstone?
I think it depends. It depends on the king. I think a lot of that depends on Aegon V and how close he'd be willing to keep his family, even if they were rivals to the throne. And this is again we have to speculate. These are things that we hopefully will get as we get more Dunk and Egg novels, when we see what kind of young man Egg will grow into, as to would he be the type of person to send family away, or would he keep them close? And given his feelings towards Aerion and how he wanted Dunk to just straight up kill him, it's hard to say how he would feel about Aerion's son. We would like to think that Aegon wouldn't hold it against him. Like the sins of the father should not be the sins of the child. But people are complex, people are gray, and Aegon, as much as we love Egg, he's not going to be a perfect person. He might have had reservations about Maegor. He may have resentment towards Maegor, just as Maegor may have had resentment towards him, especially if Maegor grows up and realizes, I could have been king, but I was a baby and couldn't speak up for myself. So it's really hard to say. It all depends. So for that one, we just kind of have to chalk it up to like, what do we think Egg would do in that situation, knowing what we know about Egg.
Right. Well, I mean, it's said that he called everybody to his side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is part of the Blackfyre issue I want to get back to, because what year was the fifth rebellion?
The fifth rebellion ended in 260. Because that's also the War of the Nine Penny Kings.
Right. So that's during Egg's reign.
No, Egg.
Or that was just after Egg's reign.
Yeah, that's Jaehaerys II.
Okay, so right. So for the fourth one of those, Aegon calls his family back. I'm trying to find it here. But he does like recall everybody at some point. And I can't think of it right now. But yeah, I think he would try to have his family close. I don't think he would want somebody. So Egg would never kill anybody, especially Aerion's son. Egg probably thinks that anybody's capable of redemption, and that kids aren't who their parents are. I think that's pretty well spelled out in Egg's arc, or in Egg's character. I don't think he would ever hurt Maegor, but would he want him around? Probably not. If Egg was smart, he would hide him somewhere else.
He'd probably put him somewhere nice, but also somewhere far away.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even think he's not trying to teach a lesson. He's literally just trying to send him out where he knows that, it won't be his actions that get Maegor killed, basically.
Yeah.
So
it's fun to speculate on these things until we get a proper book.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And
I wonder how he'll come back to this, though. I do.
Oh, I think once we get I have faith in George that we're going to get the Winds of Winter. I hope I see it on the horizon. But before we get, I don't see him jumping straight into A Dream of Spring. I do see at least one or two Dunk or Egg novellas just as a palate cleanser for George. Like I've said, because the Dunk and Egg stories, while they touch upon some darker themes, for the most part, they're pretty. Mystery Night aside, because there's a lot, Alan Cockshaw going down the well. There's plenty of fighting and murder and brutality, but compared to the main series, Dunk and Egg novels tend to be a bit more lighthearted. So I do see a Dunk and Egg novel following T-Wow just as a palate cleanser, and because we as the reader, I think we're going to need a bit of levity, because Winds of Winter is probably going to be the darkest we get, because we're starting with the Battle of Ice and the Battle of Fire. Like we're starting with corpses being launched from trebuchets. Like,
I think it's going to be. Yeah, I think it'll be like very Lovecraftian, very dark. A lot of hallucinations, a lot of dreams. I like Dunk and Egg because of their literalness and their, Dunk thinks dreams are strange, but thinks nothing of them. And that's, the main series is not that at all. So, Dunk and Egg, I think, would be the perfect palate cleanser. And of course, Fire and Blood is just, I think George just put that down because he had that swimming around in his head. He had all these archetypical characters as Targaryens and just all put them down on paper. Because Fire and Blood is just one character trait after another, and it's him just having fun. With his characters, and I want that for him, but I think he would definitely do a Dunk and Egg before that.
And also because Dunk and Egg is where we're going to see these Blackfyre rebellions, because he says, in the world of Ice and Fire, much has been said about the deeds considered during the third Blackfyre rebellion. It's no, they're not. We know nothing of what happened, but that's just a sign that George is keeping it in his back pocket, and it's more than likely meaning that we're gonna see this kind of stuff in Dunk and Egg novels, because again, Egg is going to fight as a young man. He's going to fight in the third Blackfyre rebellion, and he's going to be king during the fourth Blackfyre rebellion. And Aerion is also going to fight in the third. And this is something we'll touch more upon when we do our actual Blackfyre Rebellion stream. But it says that Aerion is remembered for certain deeds. And knowing Aerion, I think Aerion probably committed some war crimes during the third Blackfyre Rebellion.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know Aerion wasn't pulling his punches. And then the next thing we hear about him is he's on Bloodraven's side telling them to kill
Bittersteel.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you know if he's going to make that call in the throne room, the one that's so controversial only Bloodraven would make it, he's probably already beyond the line of making rational choices in wartime.
Yeah. And that's what's going to segue us into our last bit for tonight's stream, is talking about, we're not so much the rebellions, but we are going to talk, at least establish the Blackfyre family tree, what we know of them. And we of course start with Daemon Blackfyre, son of Dana the Defiant and Aegon IV. And he is going to be recognized and legitimized at age 12 when he wins the Squires tourney, and Aegon IV gifts him with the ancestral sword Blackfyre. And what's interesting is we get Dana the Defiant was held in the Maiden's Vault by her husband Baelor the Blessed, because Baelor wouldn't have sex with her, he locked all of his sisters up so that he wouldn't be tempted. And Dana the Defiant she's not listed. Same with Elena Targaryen, who Aegon might have fathered Viserys Plum upon. Neither of them are listed as of among Aegon the Unworthy's true loves. They're not she's not one of the 9 mistresses that he claims to have truly loved. And it seems like Daemon Daemon's kind of a spite baby, really, because it seems like Dana just slept with Aegon as a way of getting at Baelor, in a way.
Right. Absolutely.
We don't even know if she liked Aegon. She might have hated him for all we know. This could have been a hate fuck that resulted in Daemon Blackfyre.
It doesn't seem like it, though. It seems like he was actually very good looking and quite irresistible at one point, which, is highlighted.
Oh, yeah. Aegon IV as a young man was definitely a handsome man, but probably still had a douchebag personality.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I mean, yes, in contrast to Baelor, who was probably insufferably, baited to be around, simping on everything religious.
What I'm getting
except for his wives, it's
I see Dana sleeping with Aegon, not even getting any pleasure out of it, but just be just as a way of sticking it to Baelor, because Baelor won't stick it to her, I guess.
Right? Yeah.
We get that line from Tyrion, when Tyrion says, Baelor could have saved the realm a lot of trouble if he had just fucked his wife.
Right. Yeah. Right? It's true. I think that Maiden Vault backfired instantly. But that's one of those, Targaryen things is to exert control over that which cannot be controlled, be it dragons or vaginas. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to work out.
But going with Daemon, so Daemon's a bastard, but he is allowed to he's bestowed Blackfyre, and he takes Blackfyre as a name. And when he's acknowledged, along with the rest of the great all the bastards, great and small, he's supposed to be legitimized, but we've seen, even when bastards are legitimized, in the eyes of certain lords and nobles, there's just no removing that taint. The taint of bastardy just sticks. And we see that this becomes a personal issue for Daemon. You can tell that he resents being a bastard, even after being legitimized. But it's still not going to be for years and years until he actually takes up arms against his half-brother, or maybe even cousin, Daeron, if Daeron was fathered by Aemon.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting then to go on and see how many kids Daemon has with Rohan of Tyrosh, right? they have,
9.
What you said, 9.
At least 9.
And that's it. Yeah, at least, at least 9 together, but it's not said that he had any on the side at all. So he went from everything he hated about his dad being overly promiscuous and making this, putting him in a shitty situation, he didn't do to any of his kids.
Mm-hmm.
Which tells me that Daemon wasn't just a good warrior. He lived life learning what it was that he didn't want and then not doing that to the next generation. So he actually had a good head on his shoulders, despite what anybody would say, which makes the Blackfyre issue all the more tragic, because you had Daemon the good and you had Daemon who's good. Mm-hmm. But I think Daemon was urged on to a great extent, and I know we'll get into this, but I think he was urged, by Bittersteel.
Yeah.
To a much larger extent, the same way the throne, was driven by, Blackwood. I think, Daemon just suffered having a little devil on his shoulder and a voice in his ear all the time saying, "This is what you deserve. You should do this thing."
Yeah. Again,
I think that definitely.
Sorry. I think Daemon's. Oh no, I think we go to this idea of nobody's perfect, and Daemon definitely, because Daemon didn't just immediately take up arms. Like, it took years and years of prodding, not just from Bittersteel, but also a lot of these Marcher lords. Like, you have a lot of these suck-ups, and a lot of these lords that are coming at him are, they're Marcher lords, and they're doing it because they are mad at the Dornish. They see the Dornish, they see Daeron the Good as being too lenient with the Dorn, because of how Dorn was able to get all of these concessions. They're able to keep the title of prince and princess. They get special tax rights. Daeron brings more Dornish people into high positions. He marries off his own sister to a Martell while taking a Martell to wife. And then his son, the Crown Prince Baelor, doesn't look Targaryen at all, at least in the traditional Valyrian sense. He looks more Dornish. He has more darker brown-hued skin. He has black hair. He looks more like a Dornishman. He looks more like what we would think of a Martell looking like. So
right.
So you have these Marcher lords who have spent years warring with the Dornish, now seeing Dorne brought into the realm, one, through peaceful terms. They're brought in peacefully after years and years of war, and they're brought in with all of these special privileges. Like, nobody else has these privileges. The Storm Lords aren't allowed to call themselves Storm. They're not allowed to still call themselves King of the Stormlands or even Prince of the Stormlands. They're right. They're Lord of Storm's End at most, or whatever other castle or holding or town in the Stormlands that they have. So Daemon seems to be prodded a lot by these Marcher lords, and then it's also possible that he might have even been prodded along by his mother, again, Dana the Defiant, who might have been pressing him as to say, like, "Hey, you're Targaryen on both sides. You should be king." It's kind of, it harkens back to Visenya and the relationship she had with her son Maegor, as compared to Aegon the Conqueror's immediate successor, which was Aenys the First, his other son with Rhaenyra.
Right.
Like, you could see, like, George loves to do like these parallels, and I can kind of see a parallel between Daemon and whatever relationship he had with his mother to Visenya and Maegor in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those intergenerational, feuds and who they spent the most time with, was that History of Westeros, I think, brings that one up in one of their streams. Talking about how Daeron the First, Aegon the Fourth's dad.
Aegon the Fourth's dad was Viserys II.
Sorry, Viserys II. Yeah, was, like we said, was trying to fix the entire kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And undo everything, and then do all these new things correctly. He didn't have time for his kids, so that reflected on Aegon in the worst possible way. And that happens again, with Daemon and Bittersteel. Both of them reflect the two worst facets, right, of their dad, basically.
Yeah. And not to make excuses for Aegon the Fourth, but we also got to remember too, he was abandoned too by his mother. Lara Roger returns to Lys. So
right. That's true.
Aegon and Aemon and Nerys were left by their mother. And then we see and then that plays out with Aegon the Fourth and all the bastards he has, and how many he had compared to how many he actually kept close. The numbers of how many he actually kept around him versus how many he had are very few and far between. And we see that and then certain ones are kept close, like Daemon and Bloodraven, who are allowed to grow up at court. But then you have Bittersteel, who's sent away, and it's a vicious cycle that we see playing out with these. And what sucks is that it's happening to children, and then these children grow old, but they grow older, but they still have these traumas that they experienced, and then that's what kind of plays out and becomes into their own motivating factors later in life.
Right.
And but I do like that you brought, because History of Westeros did their own Blackfyre streams with Steve and Atwell. And one point they brought up too that leads to Daemon is, we know that Daemon, he has this he's at a tourney and he's breaking lance after lance with Baelor the Blessed. But a winner needs to be declared, and it's declared that not Baelor the Blessed, I'm sorry, Baelor Breakspear, the Crown Prince, Daemon the second son. And again, this is the very Dornish-looking Targaryen. A winner has to be declared, and Daemon the second declares it to be Baelor, which makes sense. Like in these situations, when a tie has to be called and a winner declared, Stephen Atwell made the point that it's whoever the highest positioned person at the tourney does it, and this is a tourney with the king, because I believe it was at Summerhall. And so Daemon the second declares Baelor Breakspear to be the winner. And now this makes sense. Again, we know Daemon the second is Daemon the good, but again, people have their faults. Who do you think he's going to declare a winner? His true-born son, the Crown Prince, or his bastard half-brother? It makes sense that just simple human favoritism is going to say, well, of course he's going to declare his son the winner. It's his son. Plus, it's the Crown Prince. You want to make this man look strong. And Daeron's no fool. He knows what's being said about his son behind his back, about how he looks, about his Dornish looks. So it stands to even more reason that he would want this man to come out on top versus the full-blooded Targaryen that is Daemon Blackfyre. But then probably what happens is so Daemon loses. So he probably has all these lords coming up to him just being like, dude, you got robbed. You should have won. And Daemon, his own fault is, we know that Daemon was prone to what's the word? To flattery. He was prone to flattery. That was one of his faults. And so and so for this position to have, if this is true, it makes sense. If you have all these guys coming up to you saying no, man, you should have won that. That was you should have won that tourney. It's going to inflate your ego a bit. And that becomes another motivating factor that maybe makes Daemon look at Daemon and go, yeah, I should have won. Why didn't you declare me? I've been a good brother to you. I haven't done anything wrong. But it's that, and he might have also seen it as well, maybe it's that taint of bastardy, or maybe it's because of maybe it's resentment against our dad, or him picking favorites. I mean, sure, it is him picking favorites because he picked his son.
Well, right, but he picked his the son with the wife the way that it has been. I mean, though he legitimized his bastards, I don't think he could have. There's nothing you could do in the eyes of the public to say, oh, the one I had first that was out of wedlock with the queen is really you're breaking two rules here. First off, that your first child wouldn't be king. Second off, that your first child out of wedlock wouldn't be king. So I think, Aegon could do what he did to legitimize his bastards, but he couldn't reel it back in and say, okay, not only are all my bastards legitimate, but it's age primogeniture. It goes to the firstborn or whatever. But even then, Daemon was his firstborn. He couldn't just pick and choose who his heir is going to be. That would be messed up. The only thing he could do is give them all a fair fight for the throne. Maybe he just simply sympathized with Daemon, but I'm not going to assume that this one action that Aegon did at the end of his really, really, really hedonistic life was redemptive in any way. I don't think he was trying to give Daemon a fair shot. Like you said, I think he just wanted to watch the world burn. He wasn't interested in any affairs that happened after he died at all. So yeah. I think it started out as sympathies, with Daemon, that Daemon was obviously the better warrior. He was as capable, as smart, as definitive, as as willful, and all these things as Daemon, but he couldn't do anything except legitimize all of them and let them fight it out, and may the best warrior win. And unfortunately, as we'll get into in the next stream, the political mechanics behind the Blackfyre rebellion weren't there. Even even the people that backed him up were like, what does Bloodraven say? He says something about, they're too. They had too much on the line to bend.
Yeah,
they just broke.
A lot of them. It's probably like the lick spittles and the suck ups that were. It's the ones who profited and gained favor with Aegon IV, who wanted this corrupt system that had happened to Aegon IV to stay in place, a system that Daemon the Good was cleaning up. Well, if you're one of the people that was buddy with Aegon IV, then that means that you're also going to be the one who's up on the chopping block when Daemon the Good takes over, and you want to get you want to get that back.
Right. And it has so much to do with undoing, the sins of the parents, the sins of the father. All seeing it from their own personal perspective and not being able to escape their own prejudices about the situation. And we see that no clearer than, Bloodraven and Bittersteel being opposites, not because of who their father was or what their father did, but simply because of who their mothers were and who their families were and how they were raised. And, one being slightly ostracized and the other one being slightly accepted, being, George, the mechanics of the whole thing are so perfect, because Bloodraven's ugly, but Bittersteel is rejected publicly. It's like they're opposites in so many ways and fall on either side of the line. So yeah, I'm really excited about that stream.
Yeah.
To pick that apart.
Yeah. So to just move on. So okay, because we don't want to get too much into the actual rebellions. We just want to touch for this stream. We just want to touch upon
I know. So hard.
who the named Blackfyres are. So we're moving past, again, like these aren't bastards in the sense of bastards, again, because Daemon Blackfyre was legitimized, but still they're bastards in the idea of people's perspective, because the Blackfyres are seen as a bastard branch and their supporters seen as traitors, because as we know, just like in real history, winners write the narrative. So Daemon has 9 children, 6 that are named. First, we have the twins, Aegon and Aemon. And these are the sons who die at the Battle of Redgrass Field along with their father. And one thing we knew about them, though, was that they were bullies to their younger brother, Daemon II, and his lover, Alan Cockshaw. And that brings us then to Daemon II. Daemon's the one who had dragon dreams, and told his brothers that they were going to die, and they didn't believe him.
And still they didn't listen. I was standing there with the knife, and they just didn't believe me, and I don't know what happened. They just... but yeah, Daemon, Daemon the II and his dragon dreams is a whole another issue to me. It makes me wonder what kind of, what's the sense, what is going for the Reds over the Blacks here in the main series? If Dany has dragon dreams and we think that sets her apart, that somehow she's special or that her line is special. Meanwhile, in Dunk and Egg, we have Daemon with dragon dreams.
And Daeron the Drunkard has dragon dreams.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. And Daeron, first off, had dragon dreams, very vivid dragon dreams that he woke up and told everyone about.
They caused me to drink.
Yeah, if both the Blackfyres and the main line of Targaryens are experiencing dragon dreams, what's the difference between a Blackfyre ruling the throne and a Targaryen? Why is Bloodraven fighting tooth and nail, damning his soul by being a kinslayer? Breaking guest right. Why is he doing all this terrible shit to avoid a Blackfyre if on the surface they're just as resourceful and just as willing to rule and just as cutthroat and just as the regular line of the Targaryens? So, and I think that's one of the biggest questions that despite having 5 rebellions, we're not any closer to answering why the Targaryens and not the Blackfyres, because, why not? Daemon was a pretty good ruler.
I'm going to say, my biggest question when it comes to the rebellions is how the hell do the Peaks still have a castle? When they've been involved in every Blackfyre rebellion, and they still have one castle.
Right.
Because
how did they keep that castle?
Because when Harry Strickland mentions Friends of the Reach, our minds immediately we kind of think Randall Tarley, but our minds immediately go to Peak, and it's because the Peaks still somehow have a castle.
Right. But exactly.
That's something we'll get more in.
I know. It's so hard
because
there's also to get on this stuff.
Because there's also the Peak Uprising, which is like Blackfyre Rebellion without the Blackfyres.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry. Bringing it back. Yeah, you're right. It was like the precursor to the Fourth Rebellion.
Yeah.
But getting back to something, so psychologically, Daemon had 9 kids with 1 woman and no heard of bastards. So we're thinking that he's of the mind to keep the bloodline as close to home as possible. And then we had Bittersteel that married Calla, the last daughter, or I don't know if she's
one of his daughters.
Yeah. So, and then that's her uncle, pretty much. God, that's weird. So that's her uncle. So they're trying to keep the bloodlines as pure as possible there, and it's unknown whether Aegor and Calla had any kids. But between the two of them, there's no propensity to go out and just be, to just create as many bastards as possible.
Yeah.
We don't see that between the two of them. But then further down the list, as we get, Aegon and Aemon are dead. I don't know if either one of them fathered bastards.
No, they were like 12 when they died.
Right. Yeah. So, and even if they started early, like their grandfather did, I still think that they probably, there's a good chance that they did not. We know that Daemon II didn't. I'm assuming. Okay, so.
But next comes Aegon
and Aenys, those two.
And we know that Aegon did have a son because his son is Daemon III.
Right. And then there's another Daemon further down that Meleys kills. So I want to assume that that's all the same line, that Daemon stayed in the Aegon line, or maybe Aenys had a Daemon of his own. I bet they all respected their dad quite a bit.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be the first time we've seen this, because we see a similar situation with Aegon II and Aegon III. two Aegons both within the same generation, but that's because of the mothers just hating one another. And
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see that. And they would be, not competing, but in that way, like brothers do, kind of being like, oh, my Daemon is the Daemon. Oh, my Daemon is the Daemon. And like you said, being competitive.
What is interesting is we do see a sort of competition between the three, because Daemon II does not get support from Bittersteel. He's not given the sword Blackfyre. We don't know the reason. Like, some people chalk the reasoning up to maybe Bittersteel. Maybe it's because Daemon was gay. Maybe, or
right.
but that seems too reductionist. I think Bittersteel just didn't think Daemon had the support. He seemed to more, because it seems more like Daemon favored Aegon as the more martial of the children, and it screams a lot of Randall Tarley to me. The way the difference how Randall looks at Dickon as compared to Samwell is I'm hitching my horse to Bittersteel on a horse. He's a bracket. This horse is being hitched to the Aegon wagon. But the thing with Aegon is, so Aegon's the fourth son, and he's the one who's going to be, him and Bittersteel are going to kick off the third Blackfyre rebellion. Aegon is killed treacherously after yielding his sword, but we're never told what that sword is. It's not, because it seems like if the sword that he had yielded was Blackfyre, that would stand out, but George doesn't mention it. George doesn't mention Blackfyre, even with the second duel between Bittersteel and Bloodraven. He never mentions the actual sword Blackfyre popping up during the third Blackfyre rebellion.
No, he doesn't. But we know that the Bittersteel carried it back, and that Daemon II didn't have it. So it either went to Aegon or Aenys. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like what you said, he was killed treacherously after trying to give up his sword, after yielding his sword. What that means was the act of killing him was a traitorous act. And I think if he did have Blackfyre and tried to yield, Bittersteel would have killed him. That would be the treason. That would be the treachery right there, because him and Bittersteel are on the same side. But Bittersteel would see him giving up that sword as that's everything that the Blackfyres have. That's their name in a sword. If he gave that up, Bittersteel would run him through in a heartbeat.
That makes sense. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm holding to the fact that Aegon was killed by Bittersteel, and then
for giving up, basically.
For giving up, yeah. For turning around, turning tail, especially if he had Blackfyre.
See, I've been more of the opinion that Aerion is the one who killed, because we said when it's talked about the third Blackfyre rebellion, it says that Aegon is remembered for bravery, Maekar remembered for his leadership, Aerion is remembered for certain acts. I always saw that maybe it was, and since Aerion was so gung-ho on killing Bittersteel afterwards, that always made me think that maybe Aerion was the one who killed Aegon after Aegon yielded, because that would be totally within Aerion's character to kick a man when he's already down, or in this case, kill a man when he's already down. But after hearing what you just said, that raises an interesting point, that if treacherously means that it was someone on Aegon's own side, yeah, Bittersteel doing it, just being like, yo, how dare you give up that sword?
Right.
The other idea that I had was, because it also seems like the third Blackfyre rebellion seemed like the best chance the Blackfyres had since the first.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe another idea I had is maybe by this point they had already lost maybe they had already pawned it off to have because again, the third Blackfyre seems like the one. That seems like the one where they had the most support. And to have that kind of support would mean needing funds to back it up. And this, maybe he didn't have, maybe his sword was just a regular sword. Maybe they had already pawned Blackfyre off to somebody, I guess, whether it be like someone like the Sea Lord of Bravos or the Prince of Pentos. Because I'm of the belief that currently if Blackfyre is anywhere, Illyrio has it, and he's going to gift it to Aegon. But yeah,
Right.
maybe this could be sometime between the second and third. That might have actually been when they pawned it off, and now they're just holding to the name and the sword, and they actually didn't even have Blackfyre to begin with for the rebellion.
That's an interesting point. I wonder, we see how the eggs could have made it to the Sea Lord of Bravos from Alyssa Farman purchasing her slip, or her boat, but we don't see how the sword could come by the Sea Lord of Bravos. We don't. I mean, there's nothing giving us that inclination at all.
It's
so yeah, my thoughts would be that it was lost during that rebellion. Because Bittersteel gets captured and sent to the wall. He wasn't sent to the wall with Blackfyre.
Oh, no way they're letting that go up to the wall. I mean, it's one thing to let Bloodraven take Dark Sister. It's a whole other thing to let Bittersteel, of all people, take Blackfyre up there with them.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Or that he would even have it to begin with, or that, it would be claimed as his. So I want to say that, it was either Aegon didn't bring it, or it was lost in the rebellion. And then maybe if it was lost at the capital, maybe, oh no, that was 70 years ago. I don't know where it could have gone.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, Varys took it apart because he's an immortal merman, but
that's why
we don't know.
It's another thing that George is keeping in his back pocket by purposely not mentioning with the little tidbits of information we get, but still not mentioning Blackfyre. Just he's keeping it in his back pocket. But those seem like the idea that either Aegon had it and he was going to yield it, and Bittersteel is like, no, don't you fucking dare give that up, or they had already pawned it in order to have the funds to even kick off another rebellion. Those seem like the most likely scenarios. But then, so what happens is, then Hagen is killed, and when Bittersteel makes it back to Essos, after the ship is intercepted and he makes it back to the Free Cities, he crowns Hagen's son, Daemon III. And Daemon III will come and lead the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, but that's not for another 17 years. So that leads me to believe that Daemon III must have been very young when his father died, for there to be a 17-year gap between the 3rd and 4th rebellions.
Yeah, same. I think he went as soon as he was possibly capable, which means that he was like 1 or 2 when Hagen died.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But then that's what leads us then to Aenys. So Aenys, Blackfyre, is the 5th born son, and he's the one who tries to take the throne with diplomacy by pushing his claim at this great council. And he is given safe passage by Bloodraven, but he is murdered when he gets there. And Bloodraven presents the head at court and says, "This is what happens to Blackfyre supporters." So Aenys himself, he sort of jumped the line by doing this. So he might not have even gotten approval from the rest of his family because Bittersteel crowns Daemon III almost as soon as he gets back. Again, he is crowning he's skipping over an older son in favor of a younger, in this point, grandson. Just in the way that he didn't support Daemon II but supported Hagon, he's giving his support to Daemon III but not Aenys. So it's like, I don't know what Bittersteel's criteria is for who he's going to support, especially if he's choosing.
That's like a reversal of Aerion and Maegor, right? Because if he crowns Daemon III 17 years before Daemon III goes to fight, that puts Daemon, like I said, around 1 or 2, which is the mirror opposite of Aerion and Maegor, who they didn't crown because they were so young. And Bittersteel, who honestly does everything just because he's bitter, does crown the 1-year-old. Yeah. But then that's how it goes, right? Because when Baelor died, it didn't skip directly to Maekar. It went to Baelor's sons first.
Yeah.
Right. So it wouldn't go directly to Aenys from Haegon if Haegon had a trueborn son. But the age is a little extreme to be crowning Daemon III instead of Aenys.
So what makes it seem plausible, it probably just seems like, just in the way that Bittersteel had a problem with Daemon II, perhaps he had a problem with Aenys Blackfyre, or maybe he just thought that Daemon III being so young, like if Aenys is older and already an adult man in his own right, he's not going to be, Bittersteel's not going to be able to mold him the way he would a very young child, like Daemon III. So he might have been, and so in his own way, Bittersteel is playing the role of kingmaker.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's calling the shots, especially once, and I think he had this relationship with Daemon the First, is that he would call the shots in Daemon's stead, and I think that they had that understanding set up already during their life, that it just continued after after Daemon was slain, and it shows because he's the kingmaker, the crown maker, what do I want to say, like, because he's not a Blackfyre, he's a Bittersteel. He gets to orchestrate what's going on in that bloodline, especially because he keeps living too. I mean, he passes away, yes, after the third rebellion, between the third and the fourth, in that 17-year period.
He makes it to the fourth. He dies a couple years after the fourth rebellion, just in some like meaningless skirmish in the disputed lands. That's where Bittersteel dies.
Right. So he makes it through all the rebellions just to. It's almost as if he keeps escaping to Essos because he knows not that the Blackfyre line will live on through him, but that by being there to make the calls, he's doing something, provincial or helpful to the Blackfyre line. That as long as he can make the calls, somehow it's still like a legit hierarchy. Like as long as they have Daemon's blood and Bittersteel's head, basically his brains, they have the two halves of the whole.
Yeah. And then there's still those two unnamed sons that we don't know nothing about, and the daughter.
Right.
And then of course there's Kala, Daemon's daughter that marries Bittersteel. And this is another thing that makes me wonder if Bittersteel, did he continue using the name Aegor Rivers, or after marrying Kala, did he take the Blackfyre name himself? Because we've seen when it comes to, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes the husband will take the wife's family name if their name is the one that's more prominent. Like, either because their name's not, either because it's a bastard name like Rivers, or they have no name. Like we see this with Bronn when he marries what's Lawless Stokeworth?
Yeah, Lawless Stokeworth, right.
When he marries Lawless Stokeworth, he becomes Bronn Stokeworth.
What, doesn't he become a Bronn of the Blackwater? And Tyrion's like, that's a fucking terrible name. And he's like,
Bronn of the Blackwater, Bronn of the Blackwater is
somebody.
It's like more of a title name, but he is now Lord Stokeworth in his own right because of marrying Lawless.
Right.
And when her barren sister has her little accident.
But yeah, that's its whole thing. So aside from those bastards, we have Meleys and then an unknown Daemon.
Yeah, Captain General Daemon, who he kills.
Captain General is it's like a what is that, like a hat inside of a hat? Like why even have the first hat?
I'm captain because I'm wearing a hat.
Yeah, right. But I was looking through the Second Sons and the Golden Company, and it doesn't look like there's any blood legacy in either one of them, actually, as far as the Blackfyres go.
No,
it really doesn't.
We're told that Bittersteel served with a sellsword company before forming the Golden Company, and that's how he kind of got the knowledge and know-how of what goes into a mercenary group, but we're never told exactly what that group was he was in before forming the Golden Company. I mean, Second Son seems like the most likely, but without direct confirmation, we can only speculate.
Well, yeah, it says that Bittersteel, he served 1 year with the Second Sons.
Oh, he did?
But but I think, well, I mean, this is the wiki again.
So many characters to keep track of.
I know, dude. I feel you. But it says he only served for a year, so I think in that year that was like how do you guys do things? What are you called? And then he just went straight away and started the Golden Company.
Yeah, it's like I learned everything I need to know from you, and my contract's up. All right, see you. That seems to be how it went.
He basically just stole their code and then like walked off with it. So yeah, then he starts the Golden Company, and then the Second Sons are slowly pushed back to being like second string, second fiddle. Yeah, second only to the Golden Company. And the name Second Sons though got me thinking again, because even though they're hundreds of years old, still it applies so well to these Blackfyres. It applies to Tyrion too, being a second son, but it also like applies hard to the Blackfyres, and it's a really interesting carryover to have had Bittersteel be part of the Second Sons when he himself, not a second son, but was passed over in his first family, and then again in the Blackfyre family as he's the bench warmer, the cheerleader, the coach. He's not the star of the Blackfyre show, just like he wasn't the star of the Targaryen show. Mm-hmm. But it's weird that he would be willing to even be, a lackey to that degree. I guess he just hated Bloodraven so much. I don't think that was the brother he loved at all.
Nope. Definitely not.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah. Go on.
I was just gonna say, so we have these last two. We have Captain General Daemon, and we have Meleys, and we don't know exactly through which children they're related to Daemon, but they are Blackfyres, that we can say. And yes, so Captain General Daemon is killed by Meleys. Meleys twists his head to the point of ripping it off of his shoulders. He also punches his horse to death.
Yeah, right after he punches his horse to death. Once. Like, who is that character? Oh, Mongo from Blazing Saddles. I'm sure you see Blazing Saddles, but when Mongo walks up and he knocks the horse out in one punch, it's just like, this is Meleys. In a nutshell.
And it also kind of harkens back, again, another Maegor the Cruel parallel, because Maegor the Cruel, when he was a kid, he was kicked by a horse and he stabbed it to death. And it's like, well, I'll do you one better. I punched it to death.
That's a good carryover. I wonder if that's another highlight between Meleys and Maegor.
Because I'm connecting more dots for you.
Yeah, I really want to say that Aerion Brightflame would have a kid like Meleys the Monstrous. I mean, if Aerion, when he served, did he serve with the Golden Company or the Second Sons? He served with...
Nah, he would not serve with the Golden Company because he wanted Bittersteel dead.
Right. No, he served with Second Sons? No, because Aegor served with Second Sons. He served with somebody. But in that time, like I said, he liked to be called the Monstrous. And I think that... Yeah, Aerion... Oh, yeah. So Aerion and Aegor both served with the Second Sons, but they would have been years apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, he liked to be called Aerion the Monstrous when he was with the Second Sons. And I think that maybe Meleys was either taken by Aerion, by the presence of Aerion, and wanted to be just like him as a young kid, or Aerion was actually his father. It doesn't. Aerion would be more prone to having a wild, crazy Targaryen kid than Daemon Blackfyre would be. Daemon would have dreamers on one side, like his, half brother Bloodraven, and he would have tacticians on the other side. He was raising two tacticians with Aegon and Aemon, and Daemon was a dreamer. And we don't know what Aegon was. Aegon doesn't seem like a very stand-up guy, but maybe he was another dreamer and battle wasn't for him.
Yeah. Connecting another dot too with this whole Meleys Maegor thing. Now Meleys is born. I don't know the name for it in real life, but when you absorb the twin in the womb, and we see the remnants of that as the second shrunken head that's growing out of his shoulder. Meleys is born a monster. Well, Maegor, remember, Maegor only all the children that Maegor fathered among the 6 wives he took during his time, those were all these like twisted dragon spawn that were like stillborn and had all of these deformities. And so here we have another child, the monstrous, who's born not as severe a deformity as these like lizard kids that Maegor's having, but still a child born deformed, born a monster. And he's called that also because he's then also called a kinslayer at birth for having essentially killed his brother in the womb or whatever his sibling was.
Right. And then it says he became a willing kinslayer when he killed
Daemon, who's his cousin.
Yeah. Unknown cousin. Okay, so all right, so they're cousins. It says cousin in the world book. So they could be kids of Aerion Brightflame and Daemon Blackfyre and be cousins, right? Or is that too far apart? That's too far apart.
That's if we're using cousins as a reductionist point and not thinking first cousins, because
and not literal cousins.
Because they could also just be sons of, for all we know, they could be the sons of the two remaining unnamed sons of Daemon's youngest children.
That's true. Or they could be Cala's son and
with Bittersteel, yeah,
right, and Aegon's son. Okay, or Aegon's descendant, anyway.
Yeah, these are things we need. A Fire and Blood 2 and more Dunk and Egg novels to really hash out this Blackfyre family tree.
We really do. And I think because George says that these actions are well known, I think that these actions will come around in the next book, because these things that are well known, this isn't like, Jaime talking the Blackfish's ear off when he's supposed to be getting married to Leza Tully, right? This isn't like some conversation that Jaime remembers having with the Blackfish. This is well-known shit. So we're going to see some of this, especially in the next book, as the Blackfyre thing comes into the limelight. Also, is Bloodraven alive? Because he doesn't seem to care that the Blackfyre thing is happening. And remember in Dunk and Egg, he says he's got one eye fixed across the narrow sea. What happened to that? Does he not care anymore? Is Tree Guy? Go on. I'm sorry.
That's the thing I question, because it's in between the 3rd and the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion is when Bloodraven goes to the wall, because 3rd Blackfyre Rebellion is 219, 4th is 236, Egg is crowned king in 233. That's the same year that Bloodraven goes to the wall, because that's when he kills. It's during the Great Council of that year is when Aenys is killed. So Bloodraven. So during the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, Bloodraven is at the wall, and that is a question that I've actually asked. Is we know that a good portion of the Raven's teeth accompany Bloodraven to the wall, but that doesn't mean that he might not still have had friends at court. And we know that ravens go from King's Landing to the wall. We see it because Maester Aemon sends letters out to everyone that he can. So it's possible that even when he was at the wall, Bloodraven was still keeping tabs on King's Landing. Like, you got to wonder, like,
oh, definitely,
how far do those 1,001 eyes go? Even from the wall, he's probably still keeping tabs. It's just at this point, there's really nothing he can do about it, because to do that would be to desert. But if he is keeping tabs, when the 4th Blackfyre rebellion comes around, they say the phrasing is they were as tattered as their banners. Like, they had no supporters. Doesn't even seem like the peaks were around to support them in this one, because they're coming out of the fallout of the Peak Rebellion, of the Peak Uprising.
Right.
So by the time of the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, it seems like it is just the Golden Company and nobody else helping them. Like, and
right.
the 4th Blackfyre Rebellion, it sounds like it ended in a literal day. Like, you have they land at Massey's Hook, they proceed to Wendwater Bridge, and they're just Duncan the Tall kills Daemon III. The loyal Aegon's army suffers less than 100 casualties. One of them is his squire, Tywin Lannister, and that's going to have far-reaching effects for the Lannisters down the road. But for the most part, this has seemed like a total win, like an absolute just steamroll over the Blackfyres at the 4th Rebellion. And then the 5th Rebellion isn't even really remembered as the 5th Rebellion, because it's so overshadowed by the more overarching War of the Nine Petty Kings. Like, the 5th Maelys the Monstrous and his rebellion is more like a subset of another war than anything.
It definitely. I mean, in the same way that Robert's rebellion was something to Robert, something else to Ned, and something completely different to the realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like same feel. They were all fighting for something different, and nobody got what they wanted. But it was definitely not what it seemed like on the surface. But so was the first rebellion. What it was on the surface was not what it turned out to be in the long run. I mean, and we know that because we see it from Sir Eustace's perspective. I think everybody thought once Daemon took the field that the war was over if Daemon took the field, and he did, and he was so good at doing what he did and so chivalrous that he died, being a chivalrous bastard, being the good knight that he is.
Yeah.
So, doing the right thing gets you killed, and it's the same way in the 5th Rebellion. They did the right thing. The Band of Nine, they promised their lives to each other, and everything would go right, and then of course nothing goes right.
See, that's where I draw the line of the Band of Nine, because I think, to me, the Band of Nine is not 9 people sworn to protect each other. This seems like 9 people ready to stab the other 8 in the back the moment it suits them.
Right, but at the time, it probably sounded pretty good.
Yeah. I'm just going to put out, when I think of the Bandit, and we're going to get more into this when we do the actual Blackfyre Rebellion, but honor among thieves is bullshit, okay? And that is how I view the Band of Nine. And when we look at the War of the Nine Petty Kings, only one of them actually got what he wanted. That was the Tyroshi one. He became Arkon for a few years, and then he was killed by some mistress. Nobody else got anything he wanted.
Right, but that's probably not what he wanted either. I'm sure Tyrosh was a bitch and a half once he actually became, Archon of it, or Triarch, or whatever the hell that they have over there. So he didn't fare well. Even when you get what you want, it doesn't work out for you, I think is the point. But, going back to Aegon and Viserys Plum, I wonder who Danel Lothston is, if that's one of Aegon's bastards. I wonder if we were to see any... Now, I don't think we're going to see any Butterwells in the main series, but I wonder, even in Dunk and Egg, if we're seeing the repercussions, not just... Yeah, I wonder if Danel Lothston is one of his bastardesses, right? Because she shows up in very Valyrian-sounding armor with Bloodraven. at the at the end of Dunk and Egg. She's one of the retinues in his thing, and it's like I just wonder, Lothston's been mentioned quite a few times. Am I just going to assume that Lothston only had Jane Lothston and that's it? That this mad Daniel Lothston is not also a bastard daughter of Aegon IV?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah, madness is something we equate. I don't know.
All we know is it just says that after Aegon IV basically gave Jane herpes, all of the Lothstons are sent away from court back to Harrenhal. And the thing about Harrenhal is like Harrenhal is always ever owned by like these smaller lord families. And I think what the curse of Harrenhal, the true curse of Harrenhal, is that it makes you house poor.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the people, because it's never like a Lannister or a Tyrell, or it's never someone with money who's left in charge of Harrenhal. It's always these low to mid-tier families and the castles that do not have the funds to make any actual meaningful like renovations to Harrenhal. So it's perpetually stuck in this state of ruin.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's like these whoever moves in, they don't even have the resources to dust the place or clean the place or keep it stocked. Like there's no way that this is going to work out. Whereas it's not a small, impenetrable castle. Mm-hmm. It's a large, very penetrable castle right in the middle of everything. Like holding Harrenhal is a curse because Harrenhal sucks. Yeah, it's a castle for giants. Why would anybody want Harrenhal?
Yeah,
you can't defend it. It doesn't have any, lands that can stock its holds. Yeah, it's cursed by its very nature.
And it's what makes it more poetic that Littlefinger calls it cursed, because Littlefinger's a money handler.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes you house poor. And it's like, what do I have? I have the pinky finger of the fingers. I got no, like, everything Littlefinger has, he embezzled.
Right, and he's so happy.
Yeah.
But he's so happy to pass it on. Yeah. Sorry, go.
I was just saying, even all the embezzling he did is not enough to fully to make Harrenhal worth having.
I mean, he also knows too that any force that holds Harrenhal would just stay at Harrenhal, and Harrenhal doesn't actually have anything to defend. It's not some choke point for the Vale. If Peter has the Vale, he's just going to hole up in the Vale because it's resources with no hang-ups, ultimately defendable, whereas Harrenhal is the exact opposite. But somehow there's so much respect and so much clout with holding Harrenhal because of its, strategic place in, the neck. But is it at all strategic? I mean, as strategic as the Vale? Maybe if the Vale army was at Harrenhal, then you could make a case. Yeah. But Peter would never move his army into the open. He's not the man to strike first on anything. He's the man to run and hide.
Yeah.
So
we kind of veered off topic with which is the money pit that is Harrenhal. But
yeah, I saw that. Thanks, Peter.
But so bringing this to a close, I guess our last one that we would want to touch upon are other rumored bastards, and that would be our old friends Varys and Fagon, and where exactly they fit into the story.
Right.
And it's up for debate. Like, I want to ask you, like, your opinion on Varys. Do you think he's Blackfyre, Targaryen, Brightflame, or just a guy who is able to figure out the Red Keep tunnels?
Evidence-wise, he's a Targaryen. He's bald like an egg. He's the only person to be mentioned like that, despite multiple bald people. He knows the secrets of the Red Keep, like he said. All of this stuff points to him being a Targaryen. But knowing George, he's just some guy. He's just some guy that knows the secrets of the Red Keep really well and has designs on being this same some guy until, you know, the end of time and holding power. But Varys doesn't search for power, and he doesn't care about his image being tarnished because he's been missing since, you know, Ned escaped, or since Tyrion escaped, right? Mm-hmm. He's been missing. In King's Landing, obviously, working behind the scenes, but also missing. I don't think Varys cares about his image. If he is a Targaryen, it's never going to come to the forefront that he is. I think he's one of those that's happy not being one of the shadows on the wall, but making them, but causing them, but not being one of them. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't want the limelight. Yeah. I don't know where I stand on that.
Sometimes I think too much stock is put into the line of only the blood of the dragon will know the secrets of the Red Keep. Because we also got to keep in mind, like, okay, that line was said, but who was it said by? It was said by Maegor the Cruel. And who is Maegor to be an authority on anything? Like, why are we taking Maegor? Right. Why are we taking someone like Maegor at his word?
Yeah, no, why would we? Especially when it comes to, I mean, he just had all the people killed, right? Or,
he had all the builders
he
killed.
just had, so why would he say that only a blood of the dragon? It's like, I think he's just backing up the fact that he killed all the other people that knew the secrets. Yeah. I think he's just blowing smoke out of his ass to be the badass that just killed all the builders, to remind people that now I know the secrets. It was never about other people knowing the secrets, but I know them now.
Yeah, because just Varys, but also it crops up in the dance. Blood and Cheese somehow find their way through to get to do the act that they did.
Right.
And it just seems like, is it really the blood of the dragon that's only going to know? Or is it just anyone who's just given enough time to kind of poke around the tunnels and just sort of map them out?
Yeah, I mean, all you would need is one in. Of course, there is, you know, booby traps and stuff in there that Varys mentions, but I don't know. I feel like he could just have his little birds, you know, traverse the tunnels and get hit by all the booby traps before he does. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. And again, it's like, you know, he took Brynden Rivers' position. There wasn't a Master of Whispers prior to Bloodraven. And then he took that on himself. He was no longer Hand of the King and Master of Whispers. It was just Master of Whispers, and that's all Varys is. I think he might even be, like a Targaryen bastard or a further dilution of a Targaryen bastard. He could be Maegor's kid. Maegor raised in the shadows, you know, born in 232, raised out of the limelight. Maybe when he figured out that he was a Targaryen and he had kids, he raised them to believe that they should stay out of the light willingly. That if they're going to be in the darkness, that they should use the darkness to their advantage, like Bloodraven tells Bran. Who knows? But I'm willing to bet that Varys is a secret Targaryen. Why not? Why is more secret Targaryens a bad thing? I don't understand. We're gonna get the Jon reveal later on. More Targaryens is not bad, but I don't know. I don't want to think that, you know, all 900 plus women from Aegon IV all had bastards. I want to think that at least a third of them did, and at least, I don't know, let's say like 20% of the people in the main story might be descended from Targaryens. You know, including, but not limited to, oh, you know, it could be a lot more people in Essos than we think of. And another thing with the, you know, if Sarah was a Blackfyre, right, Illyrio's wife, if she was a Blackfyre, isn't it evidence that she died by grayscale? Because weren't Targaryens somehow more susceptible to grayscale than everybody else? wasn't grayscale created as a way to get back at the slave owners or something like that? Wasn't there something
Garen's
denoting?
curse.
Yeah,
Garen's
it
curse.
was, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Roynar.
Because that made me think that, okay, Sarah could be a Blackfyre. She could have Targaryen blood if she was, susceptible or more susceptible to grayscale. But at the same time, I was saying on Twitter, I think that Illyrio's lying that she had grayscale because he has her hands in a jar and her hands don't have grayscale. So what got grayscale? Did she get it like Shireen got it? Did she get it internally somehow? What if her hands don't have grayscale on them? He says, I still have her soft hands in a jar. He says the word soft, which means that her hands didn't have grayscale. So what is he talking about when he says that she had grayscale? Is Daemon his son? Or sorry, is Aegon his son? Or did he take Aegon and his mother from somewhere and then kill her and then pose? I don't know. That one's open for debate. It's just weird that
the way he phrases it is the grayscale that infected Sarah first came from infected rats. Like, it was very plague-like. And so it doesn't necessarily mean, like, if we think of grayscale, if it moves out from the point of contact, she doesn't necessarily have to be bitten. If she was bitten by a rat that carried plague grayscale, it could have been on the leg, could have been on the neck, could have been on any part of her body, and then that's where it initially starts. Like, it didn't.
That's true.
Yeah, he could have. Like, it could have started, like, just like you said, Shireen's, because Shireen started at her face and started to spread down, but her hands are, as far as we know, her hands are normal. Or
clean, right? I mean, yeah.
Same with
we have evidence of it in the text.
The brother, the oldest Greyjoy brother, the one that Euron killed who had grayscale. Euron killed him by pinching his nose together because his mouth had been covered with grayscale. But they never mentioned anything about if his hands had grayscale. Just that the grayscale had progressed to the point that he could no longer open his mouth. So all Euron had to do was pinch his nose shut, and that was enough to suffocate him.
And how did Euron not get grayscale?
That's the other thing too. Yeah, I get, because
damn it, George.
Yeah. It's so yeah.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Like, it's like, is it? Well, I guess that's another thing. Is it a definite that touching someone grayscale does it automatically mean you get grayscale, or is there a chance that, like, it didn't get you? Just like how, like,
Jon Con gets it and Tyrion doesn't.
Yeah, or how we're. Yeah, it's weird. It's fantasy diseases. Like, who knows how the point of transfer works?
Well, I mean, we obviously don't in our world either.
Yeah.
So
going to a gross point, though, I totally think Illyrio is jacking off with those hands. That occasionally he takes those hands out of the jar, uses them for a little rub down. But that's me being a terrible person.
Oh no. Oh man. Would he just like duct tape them together and just put them on the bed? Like, oh man, that's terrible. They're just rubbing himself down with the hands.
Illyrio is one of those people who's like, he's so rich and he has everything that he's probably at the point where only the most disturbing things would get him off. Like, I don't know if you've heard like those stories that have come out since that documentary aired about Hugh Hefner, but like the obscene things just the obscene things that rich people do when they have everything, and just anything. Like, you got to just keep going from one extreme to the other to feel anything. Which Which always raised an interesting point with me. Why Varys is so gung-ho on working with Illyrio to put Aegon on the throne when Illyrio owns slaves. If Varys, and that's what makes that's part of Varys' own hypocrisy, because Varys keeps saying that he's doing good by the realm, but he also mentions that Kevin Lannister has been doing good as things can be given the situation, but he kills him. Same with when Varys brought Aerys, the Mad King, to the tourney at Harrenhal. If what Varys says is true, and he's supposed to do good at the realm, then it seems like the best option would have been to let Rhaegar take over, to let Rhaegar proceed with his little coup and have Aerys removed so that Rhaegar could take over. But he doesn't. He's so
That's a good point.
Rather, what Varys is doing is he's doing what he thinks is best for the realm, which is by being his own kingmaker in this project that is Aegon. But it can't be, but he's willing to work with terrible people like Illyrio to make that happen. So Varys is just as big of a hypocrite as anyone.
Right. And that's an interesting question too, is that if he just wants the weakest king in power, right? He didn't want
Rhaegar.
Right, he didn't want Rhaegar, and he didn't want Tywin.
No.
So if he just wants the weakest, nutsiest king in power, the most easy to control, as per his like Grima Wormtail or Wormtongue role in the with Aerys, why Aegon? Is Aegon dumb and easy to control? Is he just the shadow on the wall? I don't understand, because being groomed to be the perfect king born to rule and being a puppet are two different things. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what Varys' is on this. I wonder if this is just to install Aegon so they can what? And then another bastard idea I had was sorry, not to jump track this hard, but was that what's her name? Lemore might be a camp follower. She might have already had Aegon's bastard as collateral. Should anything happen to Aegon, she's already given birth to a son, so they can crown a male Blackfyre, if he really is a male Blackfyre and his blood is worth anything. Then it seems to me that they would have like something Aegor Bittersteel would do, would be to have an heir lined up in case this one doesn't work. And I think for many reasons that Lemore could be just like a camp follower, instructing him not only in the 7 but in the 6 and the 9. But because they wouldn't want any women to get in Aegon's way. They wouldn't want love to be the death of this duty. Not if they've been planning it for how many freaking years. That would be the last thing on their mind. They would want this boy taken care of in that way, his needs seen to, so that he wouldn't take them out anywhere else.
Yeah.
This is a base they would cover. So when Tyrion sees that Lemore has stretch marks and has been pregnant once, or not always a septa or whatever, I think that she might have always been doing what she does now, and her past might not be the issue, but her relationship with Aegon might be the issue. I think she might be, for lack of a better word, like a breeding cow for Aegon to sow his oats. I know that's terrible. Wait, you said the thing with the hands.
We're both terrible. I guess I'm when it comes to Septa Lemore, I'm a bit more simple. I'm just of the idea that Septa Lemore would be the Septa mother of Tyene Sand, one of the Sand Snakes, and then that would, because that could then tie back Aegon into Doran Martell's plans.
Oh, that's interesting. And then Oberyn Martell's time over there, because Oberyn was also a member of the Second Sons.
Yeah, and because Oberyn's original plan included marrying Aerion to Viserys, but then he also sends Quentin out to meet out to try and wed Dany. So Doran's trying to like get his family into some kind of marriage role with a Targaryen, but the actual Targaryen that is wed to one of his children doesn't seem to matter, which is why he's sending Aerion out in the first place, to see if Aegon is for real.
Yeah, he's sending all three, right? You go marry Aegon, you go marry Daenerys, you go marry... Oh, no, sorry, Viserys isn't there anymore. Okay.
Well,
you go.
Oh, there's another one though. Oh, okay, let's go see what's up with that one. Never mind. We got a plan C now.
Yeah.
that's
the time to act.
Aegon is literally Doran Martell's plan C. Plan A was Viserys, but then Viserys got killed. Plan B was Dany. Now there's Aegon. His plan C. It's like,
right.
All right, pivot my daughter over to another Targaryen boy. Oh, wait. Oh, shit. He's not actually a Targaryen. Oh, crap. Oh, damn it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, again, Doran Martell's plans always fail.
They do. Yeah. And I think that's that's such a weird one. I wonder who he's likened to or in opposition to. Because other characters with so little planning, it seems like Tywin, right? Oh, I know Robb Stark's in love. I planned that. And Tyrion's like, what the fuck? How did you plan someone falling in love? And, Tywin's like, oh, he's just like his father or whatever. And it's like, oh, god damn, so effortless on Tywin's part was to pay this, the Spicers off or whatever, the Westerlies. Yeah. Meanwhile, Doran's down there making huge plans, sending lemon trees to Bravos to make plans with the Sea Lord years and years and years in advance, and then not following through.
Yeah.
And it's just his again, like we said, his willingness to plan versus willingness to act is just not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that might be present too here with the Essosi Targaryen bastards, where Bittersteel is all action. He participates in all but one rebellion, and then he's there a million% of the time. Meanwhile, the actual Blackfyre leader of the rebellion, they can't seem to hang on to. But yeah, dude, you must be tired, man.
Yeah, we've been going for
on the plan.
We're going at almost 3.5 hours. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. We got to Aegon, so we covered everything, and all the other things we want.
Yeah.
Everything else we want to cover will probably go into the Blackfyre Rebellion stream, which will come at a later. We don't have a set date for that one, but that's going to be our next one. And then at some point, I am going to do the stream I talked about last time, where because when I did my 5 Forts stream with David Lightbringer, we never even got to touch on Mossavi, and I got ideas about Mossavi and the whole Sunset Sea. So that was what I talked about like at the beginning when we had mentioned like the whole First Men of the East. That'll be a whole separate. I got plans for that one, but I definitely want to do the Blackfyre stream with you. Like this, don't stop. I have nowhere else to go. I'm sorry, Lord Drunken. We're going at 3.5 hours. Just seems like a good place to stop. But so. I want to thank you, Austin Flowers, for sticking with me this long, for going through all of this. And I can't wait to have you on next. Can't wait to have you on next time. Everyone, go check out Austin's Twitter. Go check out his video with David Lightbringer. Go follow Nick Eck Design for the. He's designed my sigil and the King in Yellow card that I've been using as the intro and outro. And as always, shout outs to Gray Area. I did. Have you talked with Gray Area? Like, anyone you can be on Obsidian Nights. Yeah, I was on Obsidian Nights podcast, and I'm scheduled to do another one with her in August. But the great thing about Obsidian Nights podcast is that literally anybody can, if you make the request, anyone can be on. And Gray is a great person to talk to. I owe a lot to Gray Area. And
oh yeah, she's amazing. Her videos are so packed with knowledge.
Mm-hmm. She's just really fun to talk to.
Oh, is she?
I had a blast with her doing the Tyrion 1 chapter. And,
that's awesome. I gotta check that one out. I'm not subscribed to her only because I don't know. I even with the people I am subscribed to, it's like notifications every like 2 or 3 days. And although I love it, I just can't keep up with it.
Oh yeah. A lot of these streams I'm watching are background noise while cooking or doing laundry. It's the only way to actually be able to get through that many hours of content. And then here I am throwing another 3.5 hours onto people.
And it doesn't even seem like we were, I mean, we hit all the points. We did great, but we could still talk for another 4 hours just on stuff that's like fringe rebellion.
And that is the most amazing things of these books and the world George's created, because we're talking stuff that isn't even, hardly anything we talked about is even in the main series. It's all stuff we picked up from side stories like the World of Ice and Fire and the Dunk and Egg novels.
Yeah. And so much of it is just psychology too. Like, yeah, so much of these books, I mean, George will just say something offhanded and he's like, we'll see if people get it. You know, if people get it, they get it. If not, that's fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so neat, man.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to call it for a night here. Again, thank you for being
so
with
much,
me.
Man.
All right.
No, and, thank you, man. Anytime you need somebody to talk crazy tinfoilness, I'm here.
Thank you. Well, we're going to do that again when we start talking Blackfyre rebellions and do some heavy speculating on those third and fourth ones. All right. So
good.
We're just going to play us out with that, again, with that outro, that designs by Nick Eck Design. And check out my social media at The Gray Waste on Twitter. Follow Austin at The Edge Knight on Twitter, and every other link that is in the video info. And so have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.